Reports to standing committees.
February 16, 2024. Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 6, Nursing Home Administrators Temporary Licenses, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign Vulnerable Adults, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred Senate File 84, School Facilities Use Fees, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Beitman, Brennan, Scott, and Steinmetz. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Scott, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 81, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities Immunity, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Barlow, Bouchard, Dockstader, and Hutchings. Senator Baldwin, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration Promoting Obscenity, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. No, Senator Case. Senator Landon, Chairman. February 16, 2024, Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred Senate File 53, 6th Judicial District Number of Judges, respectfully report same back to the Senate with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Case, Cooper, Furphy, Landon, and Schuler. Senator Landon, Chairman.
Thank you. What's that? Senator Landon, do you have a motion on re-referral?
So I am, I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't know what the,
Would you like to wait?
I need to wait.
We're going to lay it back.
Mr.
Absolutely
President,
no problem.
My apologies.
No, I caught, yeah, Senator Ide, do you have a privilege of floor you'd like? You're not ready. Okay, we'll move on. I'm batting 100% right here at lunchtime. Now, this one I do know I've got. Come on in. So this afternoon, we're joined by a few more than special guests, really good old friends of mine of the Boys and Girls Club. Jay Butler is the president of the Boys and Girls Club of Douglas and the area council president for the Wyoming Boys and Girls Club. Jen Cundy is the national area council representative for Wyoming and Montana with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. Joining her is Isabel Norris from the Du Bois Club of Central Wyoming. Isabel is the recipient of the Wyoming Youth of the Year Award. Fellow senators, please help me to welcome these special guests to the Senate.
Thank you, everyone, for welcoming us here today. The Boys and Girls Clubs of Wyoming serve over 17,000 youth every day. And the one thing that I think that is the most important thing is we offer our youth hope. And there's nothing more important than our youth having hope. We had our Youth of the Year competition, and our winner was awarded this morning in the Rotunda. We also have J.C. Knockman from Douglas up in the top is one of our competitors, and Aiden Cambria from Cheyenne. We also have numerous board members and staff from across the state, and we have national staff here in representation too. So thank you. And Isabel is our winner, who goes as Belle, and she is from Du Bois, Wyoming, and belongs to the Central Wyoming Clubs. And Isabel is going to give her speech.
Welcome, Isabel.
A horse gallops with his lungs, perseveres with his heart, and wins with his character. I am always looking towards my future, but I am so grateful for my past. It's what built me, and I wouldn't be who I am today without it. I've faced many challenges in my 16 years. Before I was born, my mother suffered permanent brain damage from a nearly fatal car accident. My father's drug addiction tore our family apart, causing my parents to divorce before I was 2. When I was 7, my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she was unable to get out of bed most days. Because of this, I've been a caregiver for my family. Most recently, she suffered a stroke, and she had to face a life-threatening surgery to repair the damage it caused. This has been difficult as I lost my father last year due to carbon monoxide poisoning. I first joined the club when I was 6 years old, playing on their soccer team, and slowly I transitioned into being a full-time member and attending most of their activities. They've been there through most of my hardships, and whenever I need support, I turn to them. Whether it's a shoulder to cry on or a listening ear, caring club mentors are there to help me in any way they can. While some might turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with life challenges like these, the club has kept me focused on strengthening my character, including leadership and independence for the past 10 years. At home, I'm a caregiver, but at the club, I receive the love and the support I need. The club helps me strive for what I want in life, and it challenges me to set goals for my future. I develop courage at the club through activities I never would have tried if club directors Lauren and Madison hadn't encouraged and believed in me. I would have never strived to be the first girl to the top of the rock wall in Lander, or jumped at the chance to ride at the front of the raft while rushing down the Snake River. Lauren and Madison guide me on taking the reins on the trail towards my future. I wouldn't be the person I am today without the leadership the club has given me. In addition to the club and my family, my horses lend me the wings I sometimes lack. These gentle creatures help me clear my mind so I can refocus on my responsibilities, like maintaining straight A's in school. As a junior at Du Bois High School, I play on the varsity basketball, volleyball, and track teams, all while working for my family's outfitting business. It's amazing what you can learn from horses, and they've made such a difference in my life. This past summer, I had the opportunity to travel to Maryland and work at an amazing therapeutic riding center. I worked alongside people who truly cared for horses and the people that needed us most. Many of these horses had rough pasts, and they were old and ready for retirement, yet they were still able to make such a difference in our clients' lives. Without the courage and the leadership the club has given me, I would have never gotten this amazing opportunity, and I wouldn't have been able to work to my full potential. My passion is working with animals, and I plan to become a veterinarian. My goal is to get my bachelor's at the University of Wyoming and then my doctorate in veterinary medicine. Through the courage I've gained by being a club member, my hard work, and my personal experiences, I know I can achieve each and every one of my goals. Like Tessio said, I, like a horse, gallop with my lungs, persevere with my heart, and win with my character. Thank you.
A great program with great people. Senator Boner,
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Privilege of the floor.
granted.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a little bit of time bragging on one of my constituents here. Mr. Butler and I are not just only neighbors there north of Douglas, but Mr. Butler is a important part of our community. I think we had a little bit of a discussion about, say, something in the Department of Education where you get fresh meat from local ranchers in the school lunch menu. Mr. Butler has been absolutely instrumental in getting that going and continuing that program throughout Douglas, as well as being a part of the First Lady's Hunger Initiative, doing very similar work, not just in Douglas, but throughout the state. So I'd be remiss if he didn't, if he stuck off the floor without embarrassing him too much. So thank you, Mr. Butler, for all you do. Appreciate it.
Hear, hear. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, I want to apologize to you and the chief clerk a few minutes ago. Everybody's on the run. I am too, and I wasn't quite ready with a request for re-referral. Senate File 53, the 6th Judicial District Number of Judges Bill, has an appropriation in it. I'd ask that it be re-referred to Committee Number 2.
Without objection, so ordered. Bill's on introduction. Wow, now that's a stack of bills. Senate File 132, first reading of the Senate file. Oh, cold.
Senate File
Someone grab cold.
132, American Rescue Plan Act Appropriations Amendment 4, sponsored by Senator Kolb.
I don't have Senator Kolb. Ellen, can I back up and do an, Mr. Majority Floor Leader?
Mr. President, I move for introduction
Please, sir.
of Senate File 132, American Rescue Plan Act Appropriations
He's here.
Amendments 4.
Thank you.
And for an explanation of introduction, I'll have you call on Senator Cole.
Thank you. You're tardy. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 132 of the American Rescue Act Appropriation Amendments 4 and ask for your aye vote. Whew. Sorry, I'm a little out of breath, Mr. President. Ran up here. This bill is a vehicle to expend ARPA funds, commonly known as, for purposes in the state of Wyoming, and not letting them revert back to the federal government, where I'm afraid they would go to our, people of difference opinion on the east or west coast, which is where they'll end up. So this has a outline of how we can do that, how we can effectively do that to save the money for projects, water projects, all the way down to potential YDOT projects. There's going to be amendments on this. There's quite a few coming to make the order more clear, to give more latitude, because the issue we're going to run into at the deadline is there is a lot of folks that have a project that frankly may not get completed. And if it's not structured correctly, those funds won't be expended. And so it's going to be in a process to make sure the best use can get could those funds be put towards. And for instance, water projects. There's a grant match they have to have for water projects. And these ARPA funds, some of them are applicable to backfilling that grant percentage that the localities have to put up. And this would go towards backfilling that, just to name some. So I would ask the body to move this forward, to give, I guess, the ability to craft a more explicit set of amendments that will make this happen more easily, that's well thought out, and of course, with lots of discussion. So with that, I'll stop there, Mr. President, and ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 132. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye.
No. Jones? Aye. Aye. Kinski? Aye. Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 132, 25 aye, 6 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 132 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 130, Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm ready now. Sorry I wasn't earlier. So, as we know, Wednesday was Valentine's Day and February is Heart Month. What you may not know is the American Heart Association was established in June 1924. So this year, 2024, marks the 100th anniversary of the American Heart Association. It is noteworthy that since the founding of the American Heart Association and their significant funding for heart-related research, deaths from cardiovascular disease have been cut in half. To celebrate this milestone, today we are joined by Mackenzie Kern, Miss Wyoming 2023. She has represented Wyoming with grace, determination on national pageant stages. Mackenzie, who hails from Casper, has founded 2 successful businesses and is a dynamic individual who is passionate about advocating for heart health. Her father survived what's known as the Widowmaker heart attack, which has fueled Mackenzie's advocacy for the American Heart Association. Mackenzie's mission is clear: to raise awareness, inspire action, expand the association's impact in Wyoming, combining her entrepreneurial spirit with a heartfelt commitment to making a difference. Senators, please join me in welcoming Mackenzie Kern and representatives of American Heart Association as part of You're the Cure at the Capitol Day, the American Heart Association.
Thank you, Senator Ide. Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Mr. President, Senate File 23, Public Utilities Energy Resource Procurement. It was read in this morning. It has an amendment, as it's really originally drafted, it doesn't have an appropriation. We added one in the committee, and I'd ask that that bill with the amendment be re-referred to the Appropriations Committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Bill number, Senator Case, again.
Senate File 23, sir. Public Utilities Energy Resource Procurement.
Thank you. I'm kind of deaf. Senate File 131, introductory reading.
Senate File 131, Regulatory Reduction Task Force 2, sponsored by Senator Cole.
Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the introduction of Senate File 131. It is the Regulatory Reduction Task Force number 2. And ask for your aye vote. This bill is about a committee that was set up by Management Council, consisting of 6 legislators and 9 governor-appointed positions covering DEQ, ag, fire marshal, oil, gas, mining, local government, business, and then commercial or residential buildings, to name a few. And then the 3 House members, 3 Senate members, chaired by the good Senator Guru. This has been a working task force, and it's made surprisingly a lot of progress. I really didn't know how it was going to work until I sat there, and I can report to this body this task force has made headway, and maybe in not so much legislative changes, but in rulemaking changes that once brought out, the agencies agreed that they would do rulemaking. There wasn't a need for a statute. Just on the merits of that change, it seems to have proven itself to be valuable. And I can't speak for the future, 5 years from now, but I can say right now it's currently working, it's working well. I would like our chairman, Chairman Guru, if he would like to say a few words about it, because he is the chairman of this committee that has been working well. I guess he can't, can he? It's introduction. I apologize, Mr. President. I will ask for your aye vote.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 131. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Purphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 131, 29 aye, 2 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 131 is referred to Minerals Committee. That's a change, Ellen. Thank you. Senate File 130, introductory reading.
Senate File 130, the Equality State, Not Equity State Act, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 130, the Equality State, Not Equity State Act, and ask for your favorable vote. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a really short bill. As you can see, it's a 3-pager. It's quick and to the point. What we're dealing with here is we've seen DEI is what it's called, diversity, equity, and inclusion, creep its way into the equality state through our institutions, namely our big one over the hill there. And I've been hearing a lot from my constituents about this, and they're concerned. I've received letters from folks at the university about it, very concerned about it, asking me to do something. So here I am, I'm doing something about it, and this is what it does, ladies and gentlemen. We go into Title IX, Chapter 25, we're gonna just tell prohibiting government entities from engaging in any diversity, equity, or inclusion program, and then for purposes of definition, flip over to page 2 and we'll define it for you. Paragraph 1 says diversity, equity, or inclusion for this purposes, this section means any program, activity, or policy that promotes differential or preferential treatment of individuals or classifies such individuals on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, gender identity, or sexual orientation. So that's what this bill does. It just says it prevents those state institutions from adopting this discriminatory behavior. We are the equality state, not the equity state. We've been so for about 134 years now, and let's keep it that way. We can lift people up without tearing other people down, and political litmus tests, compelled speech, and discrimination have no place in the equality state or our institutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Biden. First reading of Senate File 130. The reading clerk, please call the roll.
Senate File.
Chief Clerk, my apologies. Will the Chief Clerk please call the roll?
Randy. Senate File 130, introductory vote. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow. No. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. No. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. No. French. Aye. Murphy. No. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Landon. No. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. No. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll. Aye. Closing vote. Cooper, no to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 130, 22 aye, 9 no.
Senate, having received the required approval of 2/3 elected members, Senate File 130 is referred to Committee Number 3, Revenue. Senate File 128, introductory reading.
Senate File 128, Approval of Charter School, sponsored by Senator Dockstader.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move Senate File 128, approval of charter school. Ask for your approval. Folks, so we've got a situation out in the west, community that it's not really working to go south. That we're growing rapidly, but it's not really working to go south or north. Sits at the major junction to the highways that go up into Jackson, down into Star Valley, Alpine, and they're growing rapidly. And as we discussed this as a community, and they formed a school committee in the community, said, what's the route to go? And they felt like, let's explore the charter route. We have an offer to actually do the brick and mortar construction. And so we thought, let's put the wheels in place to get that approved. We have an opportunity, an excited community to develop this. And so what I asked in this bill is we simply move the authorized approval date up to July 1st, 2024 versus 2026. And let us go to work and take care of our own destiny and see if we can get this in place. We completely understand that there's a lot of process to go through still, a lot of work to be done, but I'm trying to open up an opportunity for this school and this community and ask for your support.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 128, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin.
Aye.
Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter.
Aye.
Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Murphy. No. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Kolb. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 128, 27 aye, 4 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members of the Senate, Senate File 128 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 127, first reading of Senate File.
Senate File 127, Sales Tax Distribution Rates, sponsored by Senator French.
Senator French.
Yes, Mr. President. I move Senate File 127, sales tax distribution rates. And what this bill does is changes those distribution rates from what it is currently, 69% to the state, 31% back to the cities, towns, counties. You know, everybody in here pays that 4% sales tax. Your family members that live here do, your friends, your neighbors, businesses, everybody's paying that. They collect it and they send that down to the state, 100%. Then the state gives back 31%. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's fair. I don't know how it got to be that way. Personally, I think it should be 50-50, but this just changes it 3%. So it's an additional 3% out to those communities and 3% less to the state. Yeah, the state needs money. They have a lot they deal with, but so do those counties, those towns. I know in my county, they help the senior citizen center, the crisis intervention centers, you name it. They have employees. They do a lot of things to improve their communities, to make it more livable. And this is just a small thing to help them out. Now, you know, you think about, last year we put away what, $1.5 billion with a B dollars, then maybe this year 100 million more. With the treasurer's making 5% on that, and I don't know what that is, but if he's making 5%, that's like $75 million. This is 30 million back to the communities. I think they deserve it. They need it. They paid it. They paid it all, you know? So I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introduction vote, Senate File 127. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Aye. Brennan? No. No. Case? No. No. Cooper?
No.
No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. Aye. French?
Aye.
Aye. Furphy? No. No. Guru? No. No. Hicks?
No.
No. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Ide?
Aye.
Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Cole? No. No. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott?
Aye.
Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Aye. Kinski?
Excused.
Excused. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 127, 16 aye, 14 no, 1 excused.
Senate File 127, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, has failed introduction. Senate File 126, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 126, Property Tax Exemption Inflation Cap 2, sponsored by Senator Dockstader.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bringing Senate File 126, Property Tax Exemption Inflation Cap 2, and ask for your favorable approval. Members of the Senate, this will provide a property tax exemption for any amount of property tax value for a residential structure that is in excess of 3% increase in the value from the prior year. First year of the exemption, value would be determined by going back to 2020, the 2020 value, with the maximum increase of 3% per year from 2021 to 2024. Now, if a person owns more than one residential property, they would only be eligible for the exemption on one property, nothing more than that. The property is acquired by a new owner for that year, the exemption would not apply, And property would be valued at full value for the year, and then the exemption would be applied to the new owner in subsequent years. So it sets up the sideboards on who gets to be a part of this. The bill would also require information related to the exemption to be included on the assessment schedule that's provided to the taxpayers. Folks, I've never seen the public so upset with us as a state on property taxes. Last year, we got a constitutional amendment through, you'll see on the ballot. Appreciate your support on that, but right now, we need some fixes, some immediate fixes, and we've got some on the floors, both floors, for consideration. I attended a meeting one night in one of my communities, town hall meeting. The place was packed inside, the front porch was packed, people were leaning through the window, and then out in the parking lot. They were waiting to talk to us, not only myself, but our county commissioners, because they wanted an accounting to how the money was being sent, because it's gone too far, it's out of control, the system is broke. We got to find a solution, whether it's this or one of these other pieces of solution, one of these other pieces of legislation. It's time to find a solution for our Wyoming residents. I ask for your support on this bill. Thank you.
Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, 126. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin?
Aye.
Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter?
Aye.
Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 126, 29 aye, 2 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 126 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. First reading of Senate File 125.
Senate File 125, Pari-mutuel Wagering Activities Amendments, sponsored by Senator Driscoll.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I move for adoption and pray for your help on Senate File 125. Folks, this is a bill that last year was one of the very few bills that resided at the bottom of my drawer at the end. It is a bill to bring our pari-mutuel industry. This doesn't do anything as far as forwarding ahead or back. The FBI requires background checks on virtually all of the people involved with pari-mutuel in any fashion. And last year, they were ambiguous as to what they actually wanted. They said, go run a bill, and if we don't like it, we'll tell you. And consequently, I took a lot of heat and I buried that bill. In the interim, they've come back to us. They've now clarified the language, told us what we wanted, and I think this bill represents that. It's a fairly lengthy bill, but really what it does is brings in definitions that the FBI requires in order for us to continue our horse racing activities the way they go. So for that end of it, I think this is a critical bill. If we're gonna have our horse races go in some of that end of the world, we need this one that's of pretty high importance. Be happy to talk to any of you if you've got problems afterwards, but I'd really like to get it introduced and let's get it down the road and let's keep running those big races. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. First reading of Senate File 125, the Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 125, Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? I, Hutchings. No, Ide. I, Jones. I, Kinski. I, Cole. I, Landon. I, Larson. I, McEwen. I, Nethercott. I, Pappas. I, Rothfuss. I, Salazar. I, Schuler. I, Scott. I, Steinmetz. I, President Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 125, 29 aye, 2 no.
Having received the required approval of two-thirds of the elected members, Senate File 126 is referred to Committee Number 5, Travel.
No.
Oh, 125, thank you. I don't know why I did that. Oh, I had one missed off. I'll start over and make sure I do this right for the record. Having received the required approval of two-thirds of elected members, Senate File 125 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel, 6. I'm sorry, I can't add, but I can take signals from the catcher out there. So, Senate File 124, introductory reading.
Senate File 124, Teachers Labor Organization Strike Prohibition, sponsored by Senator Hicks.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move for introduction, Senate File 124, Teacher Labor Organization Strike Prohibitions. You know, members, we've had a lot of discussions over the years as what may or may not happen in Wyoming, and the simple fact, a couple of years ago, we came very near to a situation where a number of teachers, and sometimes with the support or knowledge of unions, tried to strike to come into their classroom. We know the cost of that. All those states that allowed that to happen, whole age class of students can't read in this country anymore, Mr. Chairman. So this would prevent teacher unions to either engage or induce a strike. It's modeled after another state's law that happens to just have the highest performing students in the nation. Ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 124, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. No. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. No. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. No. Furphy. Aye. Guru. Aye. Hicks.
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski.
Aye.
Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. No. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. No. Pappas. No. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. No. Schuler. No. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Driscoll. Aye. Guru, aye to no. Ellis, aye to no. Larson? Aye to no. Cooper, aye to no. Closing vote. Vote closed. Senate File 124, 17 aye, 14 no.
Senate File 124, having failed to receive the two-thirds majority vote, has failed introduction. Senate File 116, introductory reading.
Senate File 116, Wind Tax Moratorium Exemption Repeal, sponsored by Senator Jones.
Senator Jones.
Mr. President, I move for introduction, Senate File 116, Wind Tax Moratorium Exemption Repeal. In 2010, Wyoming Statute 39-22-105B provided an exemption on the wind tax for the first 3 years that a turbine produces electricity for sale. Since that time, wind energy has blown up across the state. The tax on the production of electricity from wind resources not only benefits the state, but your counties as well. 60% of the wind generation tax is proportionately distributed to the counties, while 40% goes directly to the general fund. The lost revenue that could be generated for the counties in 2025 is estimated at $2.34 million, and for the general fund, $1.56 million. This will actually triple in the following year. I did do some research on this, and I couldn't find another state that provides a 3-year tax exemption for wind-generated energy. More importantly, I cannot find any similar exemptions that this body has given to other energy-producing industries or oil and gas production without a sunset date. Let's stop giving a benefit to other states, and let's put that money back into the state of Wyoming. Let's do what's fair. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 116. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones?
Aye.
Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 116, 18 aye, 13 no.
Senate File 116, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, have failed introduction. Senate File 104, introduction.
Senate File 104, Wind and Solar Facilities State Lands Amendments, sponsored by Senator Boner.
Senator Boner, it lives.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction of Senate File 104 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill's objective is to ensure that a leaseholder of state lands that does not already have an agreement with the wind and solar developer is given some footing in front of the Industrial Siting Council. It's a pretty rare circumstance near as I can tell, but in some parts of our state, there's large parcels of state land where the leaseholder, that's their lease, that's their ranch. There's no outside, private land outside that area. And the concern is that if you have a developer come in, they could just completely ignore the person who is on that land and normally provides some benefit to ensure that that development occurs in a economical and responsible manner. So ask for your favorable consideration on this vote. It's an important concept as we see more development of things such as wind and solar. And I hope to have the discussion with you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 104. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? No. Boner?
Aye.
Aye. Bouchard? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Aye. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Dockstetter, aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Conflict? Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Conflict. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 104, 8 aye, 21 no, 2 conflict.
Senate File 104, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, has failed introduction. Senate File 75, introduction.
Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, sponsored by the Water Committee.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move introduction for Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow senators, this is our old friend that we see every year. You have a sheet on your desk that gives you all of the construction projects proposed this year. Just reading through the list: Hot Springs County, Albany and Carbon counties, Fremont and Sublette and Carbon counties, Uinta County, Sheridan County, Bighorn County, Lincoln County, Goshen County, Washakie County. Almost every county represented in this room is on this list in some fashion, and if not here, probably in the bill that is its companion bill in the planning that's coming over from the House. So just ask for your favorable consideration of this bill. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 75, Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz?
Aye.
Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 75, 31 aye.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 75 is referred to Committee Number 5, Ag. Senate File 120, introductory.
Senate File 120, Driver's Licenses, Unauthorized Alien Restrictions, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move Senate File number 120, Driver's Licenses, Unauthorized Alien Restrictions, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. This is a good little bill, but it has a big voice in standing with the border states. What this bill basically does is it's against sanctuary driver's licenses. So if a state actually gives a driver's license that does not include the markings that says that this person belongs in the United States, then what this language in this bill does is it says that license is not valid in Wyoming. So if you just really quickly, if you look on the heart of the bill, if you look on line 8, page 2, markings establishing that the license or card holder did not provide proof of lawful presence shall be deemed invalid in this state. That's the heart of the bill. All the rest is conforming language to put everything in place in other places in the statute. So with that, I would like to ask for your yes vote on this bill. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File, beg your pardon, 120. Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? Boner? Aye. Bouchard?
Aye.
Aye. Brennan? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Dockstetter, no to aye. Furphy, no to aye. Baldwin? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 120, 26 aye, 5 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 120 is referred to Committee Number 7, Corps. Senate File 98, introduction.
Senate File 98, Statute of Limitations, Medical Procedures on Minors, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is another little bill. It's only 6 pages. I'd like to move Senate File 98, and I ask for your favorable consideration. What this bill does is, we've seen the cases where they're changing the gender of minors, and what we've seen, and we've had the testimony in this Senate of a young girl who they did such a treatment to between chemicals and hormones and surgery, and they started to change her sex. And a few years later, she realized that, wow, maybe this wasn't the right thing to do. Sadly, in her case, there is a statute of limitations, just like in this state, there is also a statute of limitation. And this is happening all over the country, where there's just 2 years that they can actually come back and say, whoa, wait a minute, this doctor did this to me. So this is nothing new. There are cases in states on just regular surgeries where they have extended the statute of limitations. This is one where it's very specific for these treatments of gender change. So if you look at the bill, you'll see a lot of definitions. This includes the hormones, the puberty blockers, surgeries, all of it. And so what this bill does is says that they have until their 21st birthday to come back and sue the doctor. And so that's, in a nutshell, that's the bill, and I would ask for your vote on this bill. Thank you.
Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 98. Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard?
Aye.
Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky?
Aye.
Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote? Landon, no to aye. Cooper, no to aye. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 98, 27 aye, 4 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 98 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Senate Joint Resolution Number 3, introductory vote.
Senate Joint Resolution 3, Constitutional Amendment Vote Requirement, sponsored by Senator Larson.
Senator Larson.
Mr. President, thank you. I move for introduction, Senate Joint Resolution Number 3. This is a simple resolution. It's amending our Constitution, the Wyoming Constitution. 6 counties have over half the registered voters in the state, and therefore could carry a constitutional amendment pretty easily without support from the 17 other counties. This idea seems to work at the national level, where any constitutional amendment to our federal constitution requires 3/4 of the state. Why not do the same in our state, where three-quarters of the counties would have to have a majority to pass a constitutional amendment?
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 3, introductory vote. Anderson? No. No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution Number 3, 14 aye, 17 no.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 3, having failed to receive the 2/3 majority vote, has failed the Senate. Senate File 86, introduction vote. Introduction.
Senate File 86, School Safety and Security Funding, sponsored by Senator Kolb.
Senator Kolb.
Mr. President, I move to introduce Senate File 86 for introduction, and I ask for your vote. This bill is basically a funding mechanism to an existing statute that we currently have. Under Wyoming State Statute 21.3, 123C, Romanet III, A, and B, and rules under 21.3, 132. So there is already the ability of the schools districts to adopt a policy of this nature for school safety and security funding as it relates to firearms. This merely puts $100,000 towards school safety, and it allows those districts, if they so choose, to adopt a policy and develop their own rules and how they would like to do it locally. So to sum it up, it's just a mechanism to supply funding for that purpose. And I think our schools deserve that choice. They had said in the past that they may have lacked or do lack the financial ability to do it. And I think this is one way they can do it to their satisfaction with these monies. I urge an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 86, Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? No. Furphy? I'm sorry. Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole?
Aye.
Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No to aye. Baldwin? No to aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 86, 28 aye, 3 no.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 86 is referred to Committee Number 4, Education. Senate File 109, Introduction.
Senate File 109, Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 109 and ask for your yes vote. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, this bill goes to protect our gun rights here in Wyoming. We're doing pretty good with our gun laws so far in Wyoming. Yes, we still can't concealed carry in the Capitol. Yes, we still have gun-free school zones and things like that. But I think the biggest threat to our gun rights in the state of Wyoming right now is red flag gun seizures. What is a red flag gun seizure? Turn to page 4 of your bill. Red flag gun seizure means a federal statute, rule, executive order, or judicial finding, or any state statute, rule, executive order, judicial finding that does any of the following. So what we're going to do is that it would prohibit a person from owning, transporting. Basically, I'll cut to the chase. We don't have time here. A red flag gun seizure is taking your guns and your Second Amendment rights away from you without due process, pure and simple. That's what it all boils down to. You're not party to the hearing. Now, this bill does contemplate domestic violence order, protective orders, and regular protective orders, bond hearings, and things of that nature. Obviously, violent felons. So there are some reasonable common sense exceptions, but by and large, this bill right here will protect our gun rights and our citizens from what we're seeing is Washington sending lots and lots of money to the states to effectively bribe states into adopting these red flag laws and with federal money. And we're just trying to head that off at the pass, Mr. President. I urge an aye vote, and let's get this bill going through the system. Thank you, sir.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 109, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. Aye. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 109, 29 aye, 2 no.
Having received the required approval of two-thirds of the elected members, Senate File 109 is referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, Introduction.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, Foreign Adversaries Prohibited Property Ownership, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution Number 2, Foreign Adversaries Prohibited Property Ownership, and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow Senators, this is a constitutional amendment to be proposed to the voters of the state of Wyoming. We know there are a lot of foreign ownership bills that have been introduced this session. Right now, our Constitution is a bit of an impediment to this because in Article 1, Section 29, it says, "No distinction shall ever be made by law between resident aliens and citizens to the possession, taxation, enjoyment, or descent of property." This would seek approval from the voters to say, except as provided in subsection B, no distinction shall be made. Subsection B says foreign adversaries of the United States and prohibited foreign entities as determined by the legislature that pose a threat to national security shall not be entitled to possession, enjoyment, or descent of property, including any interest in real property or real estate and any surface, subsurface, airspace, or mineral interest in the state. The definition of a foreign adversary would be the People's Republic of China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, and Venezuela. So that would be the list of foreign entities. I'd ask for your favorable consideration with an aye vote. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate Joint Resolution Number 2. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution 2, 26 aye, 5 no.
Senate Joint Resolution 2, having received the required approval of two-thirds of elected members, Senate Joint Resolution 2 is referred to Corporations Committee. Senate File 102, Introduction.
Senate File 102, Foreign Property Ownership Critical Infrastructure, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a companion bill to the one before. It prohibits ownership by our foreign adversaries near critical infrastructure and military bases within 10 miles. It requires reporting to the Secretary of State. The county assessors would help the Department of Homeland Security identify parcels in which a conveyance had happened near critical infrastructure. And it puts 2 new positions in the Office of Homeland Security for $300,000 per biennia. So that is the bill, and I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 102, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin. Aye. Barlow. Aye. Beitman. Aye. Boner. Aye. Bouchard. Aye. Brennan. Aye. Case. No. Cooper. Aye. Dockstetter. Aye. Ellis. Aye. French. Aye. Furphy. Aye. Guru. No. Hicks. Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Kinski. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Rothfuss. No. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. Larson. Excused. President Driscoll. Aye. Larson. Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 102, 28 aye, 3 no.
Have you received required approval of 2/3 of elected members, Senate File 102? Have you received the required approval of 2/3 of elected members, Senate File 102 is referred to corporations. Senate File 101, introduction.
Senate File 101, Low Carbon Energy Standards Repeal, sponsored by Senator Steinmetz.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 101, Low Carbon Energy Standards repealed for introduction and ask for your favorable consideration. Fellow Senators, you have a handout in your box on this bill. It gives you the research staff has done on this issue. This is a repeal of House Bill 200 in 2020. I asked the question, what are the costs the state and ratepayers will have already incurred as a result of low carbon standards? Rocky Mountain Power is collecting a 0.3% surcharge effective February 1st, 2023, which recovers approximately $1.9 million annually from 150,000 customers, subject to an annual true-up. Black Hills is collecting approximately $1.1 million annually starting March 1, 2024, from approximately 49,000 customers, subject to an annual true-up. And then if you go on down, the company estimates costs of $58.5 million a year on the projected ones that will be coming into the increase. And they're looking at this estimated increase to produce a $25.34 increase over the current residential customer average monthly bill, and a typical commercial customer using 975 kilowatt per month would see a $40.71 increase over their current average monthly bill. So that is the reason for bringing this piece of legislation, along with the educational piece that Chairman Burkhart did for us early on, in which the PSC said, because this was a state law, that the outside of state customers would not be paying for this. It would be our ratepayers here in the state of Wyoming, as well as the fact that it will not count for the portfolio standards of California, Oregon, and Washington, because they still don't want coal-based products. So that combined with the fact there will be a 30% parasitic load to implement these policies, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and look at a better way of accomplishing our goals of keeping our coal-fired power plants going and yet satisfying the electricity demands of the country. So with that, I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 101, Anderson. Aye. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Whitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? No. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll?
No.
No. Closing vote, Anderson? Aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 101, 15 aye, 16 no.
Senate File 101, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, has failed introduction. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a point of order. We, I believe, don't use proper names on the floor, and so I think I've heard it a couple times today. So just a
Yeah,
reminder to
I've
my
let that
colleagues,
pass.
maybe.
That's my apology. I will start pointing that out. I've been pretty lax at letting that run. Thank you for the point of order. Senate File 108, introduction.
Senate File 108, Protecting Water from Chemical Abortion Waste, sponsored by Senator Beitman.
Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 108 for introduction and ask for your yes vote. Ladies and gentlemen, last year we passed a bill from my colleague here on my right that would have pretty much banned most chemical abortions in the state. Since then, there's been an injunction and the law has been set aside for now. So what we have right now is a state of complete unregulation in this area, and it's very important that we protect our water from the products of do-it-yourself at-home abortion, which could take place, because right now there's currently nothing in our state law that would protect dangerous chemicals and hormones from entering our drinking water supply. So that's what this bill does, Mr. President. Let's see, how in-depth do I want to go on introduction here? But bottom line is, that's the gist of the bill. This is mostly a water quality bill. Obviously, it doesn't do anything about banning chemical abortion. This is just what happens when it's taking place. So we're putting in some sideboards on page 5. We want that for protections for the patient, the mother. We're going to have a healthcare provider physically examine the patient, be physically present when the pregnant woman ingests that first abortion pill to prevent pill trafficking. So you can't just order the pills online and give them to somebody else, and then that patient could have a severe a medical emergency and nobody would know about it. Having a follow-up visit within 7 days, and importantly, Mr. President, providing a catch kit and a medical waste bag to the patient so that the medical waste does not get flushed down the toilet and end up in our drinking water supply or our septic system and eventually harming the animals and our own drinking water. So that's what the bill does, sir, and I really do encourage the body to vote aye on this. It's an important bill, and it is something we need to take seriously. Thank you, sir.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 108, introductory vote, Anderson? No. Baldwin? No. Barlow? No. Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Murphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Driscoll? No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 108, 16 aye, 15 no.
Senate File 108, having failed to receive a 2/3 majority vote, has failed introduction. This is the bill you've been waiting for, folks. Senate File 99, this is the last of the introductory vote. Senator Bouchard.
Senate File 99, Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition, sponsored by Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a friend of ours from last year. I'd like to move Senate File 99, Chloe's Law, Children Gender Change Prohibition. There's a distinctive difference in this bill from last year. We took the health care insurance part out of the bill, so it will no longer be an issue. The rest is the same. It's surgery, chemicals, and hormones. It also has the exception in here for if there's a medically verifiable genetic disorder, so that's still in the bill. What this bill does is it has teeth in it. It says you can't do it in Wyoming. You can't change the sex of a minor. And all the different procedures that they use to do that, those are prohibited under this bill. We've seen the cases that even other states are sending children to our state to do the job here. This is real. And I think all of you know the bill very well, so I'm just going to ask for your yes vote. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Introductory vote, Senate File 99, Anderson? No. Baldwin? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Cooper? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Murphy? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Kinsky? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Case? Excused. President Driscoll? Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 99, 25 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
Having received the required approval of 2/3 of the elected members, Senate File 99 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor Health. Folks, congratulations. It's been a pretty productive morning and early afternoon, and everybody's still appears pretty smiley out there. We did something that's not going to happen. Back to referring about names, our bills are all out and on the way to the other side, to the other chamber, and my guess is they're not going to get through this list this way. Prediction. So we're going to take a break until 3 o'clock, 15 minutes. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you give me the courtesy of referring a couple of bills to a different committee?
Absolutely.
All right. I would like to refer SJ2, foreign adversaries, prohibited property ownership, from number 7, corporations, to number 8, transportation, without objection, and Senate File 102, foreign property ownership, critical infrastructure, from committee number 7, corporations, to transportation, without objection.
Senator Steinmetz, have you visited with the corporation's chair?
Yes, I have. I visited with both of them.
Well done, thank you. He's not sitting on the floor. I
Oh,
wanted to make
I'm
sure.
sorry. I did visit with both of them, and I didn't
No
recognize
problem.
he wasn't sitting there.
As long as we got approval, I'm happy. I just don't want to get myself in a problem. Thank you. So Senate will stand at ease until 3 o'clock.
Sorry, Fred, here, I'll get this out of the way. No, I see trip hazards around.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee whole for the purpose of considering Senate File 1, General Appropriations for Government.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. Senator Baldwin. He's missing. There he is. Ringing Dr. Baldwin.
Is there a doctor in the house? Committee of the Whole will come back to order. Consideration of Senate File 1. I believe we left off at we just closed section 300, which will bring the next section to 301. Senator Kinski. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Folks, we are on the SR sheet, page 65, about 80% of the way down. On the left, you'll see the number 301. And we are in the budget bill, section 301. 301 is a pretty straightforward section. A, authorizes the state to borrow from the LSRA for the general fund for cash flow purposes when needed. And B, authorizes distributions from LSA for up to $20 million for wildland fires in the event that reserves are exhausted. Stand for questions on section 301.
Questions or discussion on section 301? Seeing no one, section 301 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 302. I believe Senator Salazar is who I have written.
Did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 302. JAC added section 302 for the purpose of funding schools, which changes the average daily membership, the ADM, for public schools from 80% to 75% for the 2024, 25, and 25 and 26 school year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions or discussion? Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had that discussion on the floor as a standalone bill about changing the ADM membership. And so I was wondering if there was any discussion when the committee looked at that issue of whether or not that is legislating in the budget, or if that was even discussed at all.
Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't recall that conversation. However, if you give me a few minutes, I'll ask some of the other members, but I don't recall having that conversation with regard to that issue.
Okay, if you can discuss that, and before we get to the end, if you can discuss it. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, also on that same topic, I don't understand the practical implications of that in terms of school funding and other issues, and whether it has some disparate effects. Would be very interested in anything you've heard from State Department of Education or any of the school districts.
Senator Dockstader.
Mr. Chairman, it was my understanding in the discussion in the committee that it wasn't really clear what this did financially, how this affected the individual districts, especially our rural districts. It was my understanding they didn't have a clear answer out of committee. So if we could get some discussion on that.
Okay. Senator Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any idea what the discussion in the Appropriations Committee was, but the policy implications of switching from 80% to 75% for the ADM relates to the use of a block schedule, where if you have a 4-period day, which is very common for a block schedule in a high school circumstance, then that is a 75% typical ratio for attendance if a student has an off period for that period of the day. And that causes a breakpoint problem where previously the 80% was set to provide access to out-of-school programs that might be associated with religious services or some other reason why a student is missing one period in a day. So prior to the advent of the common block schedule, 80% was sufficient for that. Since schools are using block schedules, they're afraid that they're going to have it count against their average daily membership for their students if they have students attending off-campus activities. So you can do what you want with that, but that's the policy implication of 75 versus 80.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to build on that, my recollection of that percentage, years ago when we were looking at ways to make our public funds go a little bit further in K through 12 education, that was one concern that was raised was we're paying for teachers, even though that student isn't in the classroom, is in their school building, they might be getting religious instruction. They're not part of that average daily membership. And so by increasing it to 80%, we viewed it as a cost savings. But it has created some issues with the block grant if you only have 4 classes a day. So, but it does affect funding and it's a policy decision. So that's my concern, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, I would concur with my colleague from Laramie County here. That was exactly what we did because it has the potential to have a significant cost escalator in the model as far as moving that percentage from 80 to 75 of the ADM. And I guess I'd like to see if there's anything out there that's got a projected cost associated with changing that. If we could get that maybe before the next reading.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, my recollection is the department said they couldn't because they don't have any idea of how many students there are that are 75% as opposed to 80%. They'd have to know that, but there aren't any because it's not anything they track right now. So it's a crapshoot what the cost is.
Further discussion or questions on section 302? Seeing none, Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think I look forward to following up with you on that. I do recall that there was no objection from the department, and I think it was essentially a suggested recommendation based on the logic at the time. So I look forward to going back and providing you information. I wouldn't probably describe it as a crapshoot, no. I think it was much more thoughtfully considered with estimated numbers at the time and at the request of the education community, and that's how it came to be in front of you today.
Further questions or discussion on 302? Seeing none, section 302 is closed. That brings us to section 303. Senator Kinski.
I bring you quite possibly the most complicated section, so I'll try to move through it fairly quickly. What this section does, section 303 actually goes back to prior bills and opens up prior 300 notes. So you will see that we go section 303 and, oh, that's the one that's yet to come, sorry. I've got not as complicated as I thought. So 303A, take a look here, authorizes the carryover of funds from prior biennia to the current biennium effective immediately. And those are for infrastructure grant administration, that's A, disaster contingency, that's B, capital cases, that's C and D, and then E is for our friend, the acoustics in the Capitol Square complex. There's still money left over from last year, so it's taking that money and reappropriating it for the same purposes. Stand for questions.
Senator Nethercott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think for clarity here too, it's not any new money. There's not new money coming in. It was previously appropriated dollars in all of those sections continuing forward and being repurposed. So I think that's important to recognize. It's not new money.
Thank you, my Laramie County cohort, as well as, I forgot to finish, 108, page 108, section F, is reversions from the community college that have been repurposed to their IT needs. And then subsection G, reappropriating funds for the Chancery Court. And then subsection H, reappropriating funds for the University of Wyoming. And I believe that's it. Thank you.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's been stated before, the JAC took a look at this, and this is reversion money, no new dollars. But make no mistake, it's big money. It's big money. Some of the research money for UW, community college money, there's some big dollars here. But it is all reversions. It's all previously approved motions that have all been approved by this body in previous years. That it's just funds weren't expended, and then to carry them over into this body and to keep doing the work that we'd already voted for it to be done. So but I just want to make sure it's not a de minimis amount of money. Thank you.
Very good. Further discussion or questions? Hearing none, section 303 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 304. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 304 simply sets what the state's contribution rates are for employee health insurance for current employees as well as retirees. We have to do that every budget. Stand for questions.
Questions on section 304 or discussion? Seeing none, section 304 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 305. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 305, the JAC added section 305, which authorizes a flex authority for the governor to transfer up to 10% of an agency's total appropriation between programs within an agency and up to 5% between the agencies. The Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Health, and Department of Corrections are exempt from section 305. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Questions, discussion on section 305, senators? Seeing none, section 305 is now closed. Next section for our consideration is section 306. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another flex authority. The JAC added section 306, which authorizes flex authority for the Supreme Court to transfer up to 5% between the programs and the District Court Budget Committee to transfer up to 5% between the district courts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion or questions on section 306. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarity for the body, these flex authorities that you see are standard, and you can look back at historical budget bills and see them in the section 300s. So this isn't a new concept or anything new, really is just a continuation of what's historically been done.
Are there further questions or discussion on 306? Seeing none, section 306 is now closed. Next section for our discussion is section 307. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 307, the JAC added section 307, which prevents transfers to and from the 100 series personnel services line item. The JAC provided exceptions for the Department of Environmental Quality, Department of Health, and the Department of Corrections, as well as the Governor's Office, the Public Defender, the Department of State Parks and Cultural Resources, the Wyoming Department of Transportation, the State Budget Department, and then finally the Judicial Branch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions or discussion on section 307? Seeing none, section 307 is closed. Next section for our discussion is section 308. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I turn your attention to section 308. It's on page 120 of your budget bill. This is a technical correction. We've got this a little bit of a numbering error from the chief executive downstairs. So this is on major maintenance. And so what happened here was the original GUSREC was off by a little bit. So we just made an amendment. We changed the major maintenance amount from $162,174,000 to $168,272. And that is for, as I go across here and look, It's for major maintenance for state, 36% is for state facilities, 8% for, 8.43 for cultural resources, UW at 36.1%, and 19% for the community colleges. We also added $100,000 from general fund for section 308E from previous budget for major maintenance at Ranch A. Be glad to stand for any questions.
Discussion or questions on section 308? Seeing none, section 308 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 309. And Senator Anderson's gone. Is someone else going to take that? Nope, Senator Nethercott. I couldn't see you back there. Go ahead, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have section 309, committee members. These are, or senators, these are some of the reversions from last year. This is how Department of Health is just reverting some of those funds for carryover. That's why it's called Department of Health carryovers, not any new money here being appropriated. You can see there on the following page, and I was checking, it looks like my page numbers are off. I'm trying to verify that. I'm on page 121, but you may not be. There's a listing there of Romanettes of how that carryover dollars are to be utilized. Primarily, the purpose of this section also is to clarify that carryover money should be placed into the state hospital demolition account and appropriating their $13 million of that carryover money for purposes of that demolition account for the state hospital. For those of you that there may be some commentary from any legislators from that area of the state, a lot of conversation and talk from the community if there was any ability to save some of those historical buildings, and that doesn't appear to be a viable option, and so it's prudent probably to start demolishing those buildings so we can have modernization there for our state hospital. Thank you.
Very good. Questions or discussion on section 309? Seeing none, section 309 is closed. Next section for our discussion is section 310. Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 310 can be found on page 122 of your budget bill. We're still on page 66 of the SR. What this section does is limits employee salary increases from general funds and provides a requirement that salary increases from non-general fund sources be approved by the governor, and provides a similar process for the legislative branch. What we're trying to do here is, and we'll talk about this later when we get into the pay scale, but just trying to make sure that we keep a handle on this and the reclassifications go where they're supposed to go, and everybody stays inside their pay bands. And the net effect of this, if approved, would be what we intended to be, is to keep this as flat as possible across the different pay lines. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to stand for any questions.
Questions or discussions on section 310? Hearing none, section 310 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 311. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 311 is concurrence with governor's biennial budget development recommendations. Folks, this says when the executive submits his budget, and each agency has a spiral-bound blue budget book like this that details all of their agency line items, their standard budget, unless we changed something from what the governor recommended, we are adopting what he recommended. It's necessary to do that, or else we have to go through all 4,500 pages of the budget. Stand for questions.
Yep, my thumb was in the wrong place. My apologies, Senator. Section 311 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 312. Senator Salazar. And you're on my mind. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 312, the JAC added section 312, which appropriates $9.3 million to the state treasurer to provide matching funds to each Wyoming community college district, including the Gillette Community College District. Section 312 is only effective if Section 8 of 2024 House Bill 135, which is the state-funded capital construction bill, is enacted into law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions or discussion in section 312? Hearing none, section 312 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 313. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 313, the JAC added section 313, which increases the governor's rec of $163.2 million by $23.4 million to a total of $186.7 for the capital, for the school capital construction. The JAC recommended that the following amounts, $1 million for school facilities project planning studies. You can find that on the budget request, page 33. $20.5 million for capital facilities project design. You can find that request on page 35. $69.5 for school facilities project construction, and $3.5 for acquisition of an elementary school located in Natrona County School District 1. You can find that on page 38. $2.3 million for various school leases. You can find that on page 41 of your budget. And 9.1 for unanticipated funding on page 44 of your budget book. 2.6 for demolition projects. You can find that in the budget request, page 47. And $29.4 million for non-education facilities. You can find that on page 52. And $25.1 million for component projects to be expended on the prioritized list of projects provided by the agency, and you can find that budget request on page 55. The JAC added $18.3 for the construction of a Teton School District 1 high school, and $300,000 for a rural school facility located in Albany County School District 1. Finally, the JAC added $1.3 for additional unanticipated cost increases for the construction of the Teton School or Albany Rural School. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions on, excuse me, questions on section 313? Hearing none, section 313 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 314. Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 314 can be found on page 132 of your budget. And this sets thresholds for distribution of mineral severance taxes to the general fund, the school foundation program reserve account, and the budget reserve account over the 2024 Craig forecast. So if you turn to page, actually it's on 133, line 18, shows 1/3 of the general fund, 1/3 of the budget reserve account, 1/3 of the school foundation program reserve account. That is the essence of section 314. Glad to stand for any questions.
Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a notation for the body and a question I have. It was on section 302, it's 314 and 315. We're actually opening up the green books and amending state statute within the budget. And so just a little explanation why these aren't bills and why they're in the budget instead of an individual bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a great deal of discussion on this, and we've had a great deal of discussion on this every biennium. We have this eternal struggle between ourselves and the folks down the hall about how the percentages go. And so this year we came to an agreement that this was the proper formula. I'll be talking about the next formula over in the other one, and frankly, this one was closer to our position. The next one's going to be a little closer to their position. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen of the body, for us, you know, we work, you know, I've been on budget and your Joint Appropriations Committee for 6 years, and I've played it both ways, you know, the hard way and the other way as far as trying to work it through. This is a very complicated discussion that goes through with these formula distributions. Each and every year, we have this discussion. And since we're going to keep having this discussion, and it's never going to go away, we thought this was the best place to try to handle it. Come to you, let you know we're fighting to get the Senate Appropriations Committee position as best we can, and then land where we land, and then let you all decide where we go from here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussions or questions on 314? Hearing none. Next section for our consideration is section 315. Senator Garou.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's move on to 315, shall we? On page 133 and 134. And this is that sets secondary thresholds for federal mineral royalties deposited over the 2024 forecast. Once again, now it starts on 134, but actually the operative part is on page 135, the top of the page, line 4 through line 7. And basically this splits it out to be 40% for the school foundation program, 60% to budget reserve account. Last year it was 1/3 SFP and 2/3 of the BROT. We changed it to a 60-40. Once again, a continuing negotiation and a continuing work in progress that we keep working and working with our friends down the hall. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions or discussions in section 315? Hearing none. Section 315 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 316. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good senators, you have section 316. This was supported with a mixed version of your members of your Senate Appropriations Committee. This is a $75 million appropriation to the University of Wyoming. I believe you've heard me speak about this project before. This project is regarding advanced research and technology that we've chosen to give to the High Bay facility. As you can see, it comes out in 3 different tranches there. And it requires matching funds, but it's really not funds, it's matching equipment, so it's in kind. As well as we give $30 million on July 1 of 2024. The additional $20 million will be available in 2025, and the remainder is allocated on or before June 30th of 2026. There's additional language in there for sideboards and different parameters associated with conditions associated with the contract. Again, the section 300 is supported by some members of the appropriation committees and not others, but that's the project, that's the appropriation.
Senators, question or discussion in section 316? Hearing none. Section 316 is closed. Next section for our consideration, section 317. Who has 317? Senator Nethercott, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is based on a previous appropriation from a previous budget bill. This particular $9.4 million is the completion of a research project currently underway at the university. Again, it's I think the final chapter of an appropriation associated with a research and grant program you can see there related to flameless pressurized oxy-combustion technology. Happy to stand for questions.
Senators, questions or discussion on section 317? Hearing none, section 317 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 318. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one is the one that's a little bit complicated because what you'll see is it looks like all of a sudden the section 300s go out of order. What's happening on page 139 of the book is section 318 is opening prior section 300s. If you go to page 140, this reopens section 321 from a prior bill. Originally, there was 50 million general fund and 100 million LISRA. Joint appropriations took 5 from section 327 and put it here. And this section now has 155 million left remaining and added in a footnote on critical minerals. And then struck subsection D regarding lithium, since we've added critical minerals in above. And then we have a reporting requirement in subsection E and added in a requirement that they not revert until 2027. Next, section 318 opens up an old bill, 325, the federal matching infrastructure grants. And the governor wanted to add on line 23, qualify for matching requirement. And then over on page 142, struck a report about deleting to the JAC, yet another report. And then in E, the governor had asked for a new $24 million to go to the water sewer revolving fund, and your joint appropriations instead took that 24 million from the 75 million that the governor was allocated in this old section 325. And then again, the new section 318 opens up the old section 333. 333 revived a program we thought we had pretty well put down, which is the Wyoming Business Council Community Facilities Program. And a bill or two ago, more money was put in, and still more money is put in on this one, and made very generic that it's for former facilities to turn them into community centers. It's interesting, originally there was one legislator angling on this. Now there's 5 who believe it's uniquely theirs. So, but it is a former program. And then section 318, again, on page 143, opens an old bill, section 334, on unmet housing needs, and amends it to add land acquisition and define it as workforce housing as well. And I hope that's it. That's that entire section. I'll stand for questions.
Questions or discussion on section 318? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, maybe it's just getting late and I'm not tracking dates well, but on page 141 of the budget in the F provision is the language related to unobligated funds from the appropriation in subsection A of this section shall not revert until June 30th, 2027. But I believe that date is outside of the window of when this budget is functional, and therefore that language effectively vanishes, completely vanishes from the books and has no legal standing prior to that date, I think. So therein is my question. Am I just getting tired, or is that accurate?
Or it could be both, Senator Rothfuss.
Or both.
Senator Hutchins, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a statement that it appears to me we've opened up Hampshire Village with this last section, and I really can't understand what's going on. And I'd like to really get a deeper understanding of each of these sections. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do think that's the intention of the explanation. And so it's not surprising that that would be confusing to all of you. That's the intended result being sought, is confusion. I'm happy, I would encourage you to reach out to LSO staff. I think section 318 is an example of how some of the experience on JAC comes through and recognizes where there are programs and remaining money that isn't being utilized and is just sitting in different locations that can be closed and shut down and move forward for different purposes and consolidated. And that's what you see happening there. So is anything tricky happening? The answer is no. You have the best and the brightest in the back of this room available to answer questions. I encourage you, as a credible resource, to go 3 steps back and get that clarification from them, recognizing that you have questions about that credibility here today, and understand why some of that money is flowing the way that it is, and see the rational basis as to why that occurred in a public open meeting on YouTube, and to see exactly how that occurred. So I would ask you to please direct some of these questions that you find confusing or unintelligible to the back of the room.
And now from one of the best and brightest on our floor, Senator Garreau, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that way over introduction. Yes, this is, for the good senator from Laramie County, it is complicated, but sometimes complicated is meant to deceive. In this particular case, I think that complicated is trying to eliminate something that I think is a problem. And if you read this carefully, there's a section here that says, And this is all through the budget that the chief executive gave us, and a lot of this may seem very technical, but what the chief executive and your JEC is trying to do is put a handle on what we call the B11 process. And the B11 process is little known, much misunderstood, but when you get the hang of it, it can become a very effective tool for somebody who wants to get something, get some dollars appropriated by government and not have any fingerprints on it. You can just walk downstairs to the chief executive and say, oh, I'd like to B11 a little money for a school, or I'd like to B11 a little money for here. Some of us get, the JEC members get a B11 report of all the dollars that are expended. Most of the time it's just flexing money between, or we have, of course, Superflex. This year we're adding one agency to Superflex where they can move money between departments, where if you have flex authority, you just move it inside your budget. But the chief executive is working hard, and we're trying to work hard with him to try to curtail that. So it's a little more complicated in the budget right now, but hopefully we'll get some dividends for us later in what I think is a bit of a process that sometimes has been maybe not used as correctly as we should. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ide.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the good senator colleague here for that description of B11s, because I've been wondering all along, and that was a good demonstration of the B-22 bomber back there. Thank you.
Senator Kinski.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You heard it here first. The senator from the ivory tower is correct.
We should have a moment of silence for that. Yeah.
It's not the first time this year. It's the 15th time today, though. He's a smart guy. Through the magic of the appropriations process, though, we just made that happen, extended. That needs to be corrected. My colleague, I have a lot of reservations about our budgeting process. You've heard me express them. In the ideal world, we would revert those funds and cleanly reappropriate them so that everybody clearly understands what's going on. There's better ways to do it, I'm sure. We agreed some time ago, before we did, about a mirror and a joint budget process and a set of joint rules, which makes changing anything very, very difficult. But I feel we should just revert and reappropriate and appropriate it in the relevant department rather than a Section 300, so it's clear to everybody. But unfortunately, you start where you stand, so that's what we've got. Stand for further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions, discussion, Section 318, seeing none. Senator Nethercott, go ahead.
Thank you, and forgive me. But the senator's correct, we do start where we stand. And so those are the circumstances we have with this budget. That's how it works. So we either capture those funds that should be reverted and repurpose them, just as if we would if it was very clean that they went back to zero and we got to use them again. But that's not how the rules of this committee operated when we have to prepare this budget. And so we either capture those funds to be reverted and are challenged with a challenging explanation in Section 300s for all of our understanding, or we don't provide solutions in this budget based on questions that have been presented to us and solutions that we offer here. So it's not my favorite method either, but there are many methods and processes that I don't like, but I still operate within those and do the best I can with what we have. So that's what's before you today. I do think that the senator from Sheridan County is correct, and we should continue to work with our colleagues across the hall about changing that process. But that doesn't mean that we break what we have currently in front of us.
Further questions on 318? Seeing none, Section 318 is closed. Next section for our consideration is Section 319. Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 319, page 144. This is from the governor's letter number 9 about salaries. And this is salaries for vacant positions. This is vacant positions that are in our budget right now. And basically the governor asked for, in governor's letter number 9, $11,600,000. Your JAC lowered that number. If you just scroll all the way across the page, about 2/3 of the way across, we lowered it to $5.9 million. It's to fund vacant positions and identified in the phase 2 salary adjustments from last year to 90% of market. So what that means is now all vacant positions will be funded to 90% of market, as now that we have raised salaries, people, they're starting to get in some of those positions when they have been reclassified and put back on the rolls, that they're starting to get applications. And so this is to anticipate that and have that funding available. Stand for any questions.
Any questions, concerns, or discussion on section 319? Hearing none, section 319 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 320. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you turn to page 145 of your budget, you'll see section 320. And section 320 is just simply adds $150,000 from the general fund for an external consultant that will be housed at with LSO to review and audit performance compensation for investment staff at the State Treasurer's Office and Wyoming Retirement System. This, if I can, Mr. Chairman, this is an ongoing effort. In previous budgets, we have gone to a system of performance pay for our investment folks who have done, as you all know, in this budget, one out of every $4 in this budget comes from interest income from our savings accounts. We're ably managed by the Treasurer's Office, and what this does is to make sure that our compensation for the folks that are bringing us this in the retirement system, for our state employees and all the other employees, all the other folks that are in the retirement system, which we were talking about just the other day, and everyone else, to make sure that we're right on the compensation plan for those folks in the State Treasurer's Office and retirement. Glad to stand for any questions.
Questions or discussion on section 320? Hearing none, section 320 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 321. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 321 appropriates some funds to take a look at the state's budget management and reporting system. $25,000, probably overdue, probably long overdue, and perhaps that might be an ideal opportunity to take a look at the budgeting system that we have here as well. So stand for questions.
Questions, discussion on section 321? Seeing none, section 321 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 322. Senator Kinski.
Section 322 relates to the Rocky Mountain Power Project. This was a mitigation that was ordered. Staff hasn't been able to find out what the origin of it was, but it was a mitigation fund. And this will be the last appropriation of it that will exhaust it and close that account. Stand for questions.
Questions or discussion on section 322? Seeing none, section 322 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 323. Senator Kinski.
Section 323 appropriates $200 million from the legislative stabilization for large projects for research, demonstration, pilot, or commercial deployment related to Wyoming's energy, including not limited to carbon capture, storage, carbon dioxide, industrial carbon, coal refinery, hydrogen storage, hydrogen hub, critical minerals, biomass, et cetera, et cetera. And they must have at least a $1 to $1 match. And when we say large project, we mean large. On page 149 at the top, E, it says $50 million. So we're talking the big kahuna. Stand for questions.
Questions or concerns, discussion on section 323? Seeing none, section 323 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 324. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 324 is found on page 149 of your budget book. And it says too, if you look on line 16, on page 149, it says, there is appropriated to the common school account with the permanent land fund any proceeds resulting from the sale of the Kelly parcel for purposes of public schools. normal expenditure of money to the common school account. And what does this do? Where does this money come from? From the sale of the Kelly parcel to the United States for not less than $100 million, and appropriates the proceeds of the sale to the Common School Permanent Land Fund. Stand for any questions.
Questions or discussion on section 324? Senator Hutchins?
More in depth onto what, where is this Kelly parcel? And I remember there was a time we wanted to sell, I think it was land, a couple years ago, and we had to vote on that as a body with, we got a lot of information on it. We had a lot of meetings on it. I don't have a clue what's going on with Kelly parcel and why 100 million. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Guru?
Any other questions?
Any more? No, you're out of luck. That's your only one. Go ahead, Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for the question. Yes, I don't, necessarily in this side of the hall when the last land sale came up, but this land sale has been the subject of a great deal of discussions, and it's been ongoing in the SLIB board for over 2 years. Actually, the essence of this came from a piece of legislation. From the other side of the hall that passed through this body and was passed by the Senate to study and monetize and dispose of high-value parcels in Teton County. I fought that bill, Mr. Chairman, fought it vigorously because I was a little concerned about why we were highlighting one county over the rest of our state, which has over 1 million acres of ground, all various values. But I think we should have I think you're exactly right. We should have a good, robust discussion about all our state's lands. But that's not what that law that was passed said. It said to study and dispose and monetize of land in Teton County. That lit the fuse. The state, the SLIB board, has been working with this, frankly, I don't think very effectively, for a year now on leasing, but that's an opinion of mine. What your JEC voted on was to appropriate money to the Common School Land Fund from the proceeds of the sale. It directs the sale for $100 million. And we'll talk about this more if there are any amendments to it. I hope there's not. I think it's a good amendment in this bill, and we'd be glad to talk about it more. And I know it's late today, but there has been a lot of robust discussions about this. It has been the subject of a bill. And so that's where we shook out on this one, and I'm sure we'll be talking more about it. Glad to answer any other questions.
Further questions or discussion on section 324? Seeing none, section 324 is closed. Next section for our discussion is section 325. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I direct your attention to page 150 of the budget as we move on. This one is another salary deal, and this came as Governor's Letter number 10. And the JAC denied Governor's Letter number 10 for $9 million from the general fund for a 1.99% increase to the employer contribution of the public employee plan within the budget. What JAC did was added section 325 here, which appropriates $3,483,000 to the state auditor's office for paid employee retention contributions. Section 325 is only effective if Senate File 67 is enacted into law. Stand for questions.
Discussion or questions on section 325? Seeing none, section 325 is closed. The next section for our consideration is section 326. Senator Kinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Enterprise inflation, section 326 on page 152 of the budget bill. Instead of each department coming to us and listing what they needed in terms of inflation adjustments, they were directed that inflation number would be asked en masse in a letter, which happened. And then I think, as I recall the chain of events, JAC wanted to know how it would be distributed amongst the departments. And we were given a spreadsheet showing what each department would receive, and it was kind of hard to figure out exactly what the basis for that was. So ultimately it was decided that a lump sum of $33 million for inflation would be allocated appropriated. And it's basically up to the governor, if I recall correctly, to figure out how that's going to be distributed amongst the various departments. Stand for questions.
Discussion or questions on section 326? Seeing none, section 326 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 327. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Section 327, you can find that on page 90 of the budget request. This is pretty straightforward. The JAC added 327, which appropriates $2.5 million for the continuation of the Kickstart Wyoming's Tomorrow Scholarship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Speaker, questions or comments on section 327? Hearing none, section 327 is now closed. Section for our consideration next is section 328. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good Senator, Section 328 is an appropriation of $100,000. This is a continuation of funding provided in Senate File 53 from last year, and it provides a breakdown of how that money goes to the county clerks across the state for training of their volunteer and staff election workers in order to conduct this next election cycle. This is at their request and resources that they need. It's a one-time appropriation of $100,000 for these purposes. Goes to the treasurer's office to allocate out based on a population formula. The good senator from Converse County actually brought this bill last year, and it was so good they asked for another round of it, and they really do need these funds to help with this next election cycle. Thank you.
Question or discussion on section 328? Seeing none, section 328 is closed. Next section for our consideration is section 329. Senator Garreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is the last one for these. 329 on page 157. This is from Governor's Letter number 9. And what the JAC did here was we reduced the governor's ask of $36,600,000 by $18.3 million to the general fund for employee compensation. What the JAC did here was added this section, which appropriates the $18.3 million for employee, and this is important here, for employee compensation with prioritization for employees with more than 5 years of service and less than 100% of market MPP as follows. $10 million for the executive branch, the community colleges, Wyoming Business Council Energy Authority, $4,600,000 for University of Wyoming, $2.4 million for community college, $600,000, $6.2 for the Supreme Court and circuit courts and related subdivisions. Basically what this does, Governor Chief downstairs had an ask for a third piece of salary increases. Your JAC decided to pare that back. Part of the reason, I think, that we discussed was that we wanted to see and wanted to make sure that the first two phases that you've already approved were doing the job that needed to be done, and that it was going to the right places, the right people, and the right amounts. But we recognized, it's called compression, where people, with these pay tables and pay scales, as you go across years of experience and all the different things, some people get compressed. I was talking to one of the staff members who said, I've been here for X number of years, but I've gotten to the end of my pay range. So now I'm sitting here and new hires are coming in above me. So what this does is offers up a way, if positions are reclassified, and to make sure that people who've been here longer, frankly, some of our longtime employees who maybe got caught in that compression, will have an ability controlled through A&I and through HR departments, which we have moved pretty much all over to A&I, to be able to go through and make sure that compression is being addressed. And with an amount of money that is sufficient to handle that need and that need alone. As far as the rest of the pay tables and the pay scale, we want to see how they're doing and then kind of give it another look next year, see where we're at, make sure that it's doing the job that you intended. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be glad to stand for any questions.
Comments or questions on section 329? Seeing none, section 329 is now closed. That leaves us the moment you've all dreamed of as we cross the finish line. Next item for our consideration is section 399, Senator Kinski.
It's not the last section, it's the penultimate section.
Oh. Ruin our fun. Go ahead.
399 is a technical just a technical note that deappropriates and reverts funds. Now for the last section, page 160, I bring you the definition of effective immediately. I think we're done effective immediately, Mr. Chairman.
Effective. Does anyone want to question that or discuss that? I suspect tonight, section 399 is closed. Fellow senators.
You have to close section 400 as well.
And section 412 is closed.
400.
I'm sorry. 490, okay. Okay. Are you ready for the question on the bill? All those in favor of Senator Kinski's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 1, say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. Senate File 1 has passed the committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Yeah, you have one.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Nobody said no. Okay.
Senator Baldwin. Could reading clerk read in the report, budget bill report, please?
Mr. President, with respect to the budget bill, Senate File 1, the Committee of the Whole heard explanations as follows. Section 102 closed, Section 103 closed, Section 120 through 145 en bloc closed, Section 151 closed, Section 157 closed, Section 160 closed, Section 205 closed, Section 206 closed, Section 211 closed, Section 220 closed, Section 270 closed, Sections 12 through 252 en bloc closed, Section 16 through 75 en bloc closed, Section 300 closed, Section 301 closed, Section 302 closed, Section 303 closed, Section 304 closed, Section 305 closed, Section 306 closed, Section 307 closed, Section 308 closed, Section 309 closed, Section 310 closed, Section 311 closed, Section 312 closed, Section 313 closed, Section 314 closed, Section 315 closed, Section 316 closed, Section 317 closed, Section 318 closed, Section 319 closed, Section 320 closed, Section 321 closed, Section 322 closed, Section 323 closed, Section 324 closed, Section 325 closed, Section 326 closed, Section 327 closed, Section 328 closed, Section 329 closed, Section 399 closed. On Senate File 1, the Committee of the Whole took action as follows. Senate File 1, do pass. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of the action taken today by Committee of the Whole on Senate File 1, Budget Bill.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion is passed. Folks, we've got a little short level of business left to go. We've got just a few things to do. We're going to go back into some general file bills to finish up. We just got a handful that I dropped off, said we might leave, so we're gonna go through that. Senator Landon, you have a comment of some kind?
Mr. President, with your indulgence, can we talk about a couple of re-referrals?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your chairman, several of us have been working together to do everything we can to spread these bills around and hopefully get them out for fellow senators. So I would ask respectfully, Mr. President, if we could re-refer Senate File 109, the Prohibit Red Flag Gun Seizure Act, Senate File 105, Wyoming Second Amendment Financial Privacy Act, and Senate File 73, the Concealed Firearms Permit Eligibility, to Committee 5, Agriculture.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay,
From
thank you, Mr.
Judiciary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, from Judiciary, please.
My apologies. From Judiciary, from the Judiciary Committee to Committee 5, Agriculture.
Very, very much.
Those
Thank
three
you.
bills.
Committee Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing this. We've explained what we're doing, but we're gonna show the world how you be fairly efficient. You guys have done great. Means we'll maybe get home at fairly decent.
I have not talked to him. Is he okay with that?
Thank you. Senator Landon.
So, President, one more from the Judiciary Committee. I would ask that Senate File 77, Homeland Defense Infrastructure Reporting and Investigating, be referred to the Transportation Committee, which is Committee 8.
Thank you.
Okay, from Judiciary to Transportation.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Biden. You're on. Oh, I did, Brandon. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Be nice if I knew where you sat at after several
Thank you,
years.
Mr. President. I'm writing as we go here on some of these bill swaps here. In light of what the good chairman said, a bunch of us have been talking, trying to balance out workloads here, and in light of that, Mr. President, I would ask respectfully that Senate File 132, American Rescue Plan Act Appropriations Amendment 4, be referred from Revenue, where it currently sits, to Transportation number 8, Committee number 8, Transportation, sir.
That it?
Without objection. And then I have another one if.
You can do the other one. I'll
Okay.
do them both together.
And then so, also, Mr. President, Senate File 107, e-cigarette and vapor material directory, be re-referred to Committee number 1, Judiciary. Without objection, sir.
Oh, very good. Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
Chairman Landon.
So, Mr. President, can you agree like these?
Well, I'm not sure I want to right now.
I promise.
Senator Landon.
I promise, fellow senators, just one more. I would ask that we re-refer, Mr. President, if you would, for us, Senate File 94, an act regarding compelled speech and state employers, Senate File 94, from the Judiciary Committee, Committee 1, to Committee 3, Revenue. Since the good Revenue Chairman sent me one, I'm going to send him one, so. Okay.
Am I
Thank you
confused there?
very much.
I may have got really confused signing these bills. Somehow I'm seeing
Thank
efficiency
you,
in their
Mr.
way.
President.
Without objection, so ordered. Folks, with your indulgence, I really appreciate what's just going on. This is, in my opinion, how our body really should function, is let's figure out how we get people's bills heard in as good a way as we can. And I thank you, and I hope the public doesn't mistake what's happening here, because I'm going to be upfront about it, is I really do feel this is the correct methodology to get things heard. With that, I've got an announcement and a proclamation. So the announcement, and you've all got it on your desks as well, I'm going to do it pretty short. Interim topic request form. Those are coming out, and I believe it is March 1 at 4 o'clock. So for all of you got interim topics, if you need to use staff to help you put them together or go online to get them done, The deadline's pretty hard because it really takes time to put it all together. So please, on your interim, that's our interim work. Let's make sure we get good topics, and if you got things you want, let's get them in front of everybody. Now the proclamation, and this is 67th Legislature, State of Wyoming honors the life and service of Sergeant Nevada Krinke, a joint resolution of the members of the 67th Legislature of the State of Wyoming honoring the life and service of Patrol Sergeant Nevada Krinke. Nevada Paul Krinke was born October 15th, 1990 to Wayne Krinke. I'm hoping I'm Senator Kinski, or is that okay? Am I saying it right? And Sally Shea. And whereas Nevada graduated from Bozeman, Montana High School in 2009 and joined the U.S. Army to serve his country as a light infantryman during the global war on terror. And whereas Nevada proudly served with the 82nd Airborne Division, earning the rank of Staff Sergeant, was honorably discharged in 2017 after 8 years of service. And whereas during his service in the U.S. Army, Nevada earned multiple awards and condemnations, including Afghan Campaign Medal with 2 campaign stars, Army Condemnation Medal, 4th Award, Army Achievement Medal, 4th Award, Combat Infantryman Badge, and Jumpmaster Wings. And Nevada joined the Sheridan, Wyoming Police Department in October 2017 at the age of 26. Whereas Nevada made an immediate impact on the Sheridan Police Department and Sheridan community through his work as a patrol officer, and was quickly promoted to the rank of corporal and then patrol sergeant. And whereas Nevada's leadership set an example for his colleagues at all levels of the department, and whereas Nevada was married to Carla, a corporal in the Sheridan Police Department, and Nevada and Carla recently welcomed their first child, Bella. And whereas Nevada tragically lost his life on February 13th, 2024, while serving the community he called his home. And whereas Nevada's legacy to the Sheridan Police Department and Sheridan community, its integrity, selflessness, and servant leadership. Now therefore be it resolved by the undersigned members of the 67th Legislature of the State of Wyoming that on behalf of the State of Wyoming, we hereby honor the life, service, and legacy of Patrol Sergeant Nevada Paul Krinke. Signed this today, February 2024. Let's do a moment of silence and a prayer for his wife and child. It's a tragic event. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to make another announcement. This is something you're never going to hear me say. So the roads are phenomenally bad, but all interstate roads are open except Douglas to Wright. Folks, we're going to a general part of this. If part of you need to get out of here and go, as long as we got a quorum, I'm not going to do any hardship. If somebody needs to go home to their family, you don't have to come talk to me. You're excused. So with that, we're going to roll right into our general file and crank those out. So Majority Floor Leader Hicks, consideration of bills.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. Motion's passed.
The committee of the whole will come to order. I like this chair so much, I came back for a repeat.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
if,
Mr.
just
Majority Floor Leader.
a quick reminder, any second reading amendments on the budget, you need to at least have the request into LSO by 5 o'clock this afternoon. We're going to try to get through 6 bills here, so we've got something going. So that's your general file, folks, that we'll be working on. So that's the only thing from keeping you to hit the road.
Okay, Committee of the Whole, the first bill for our consideration is Senate File 84, School Facility Use Fees. Will the reading clerk read it in?
Senate File 84, School Facilities Use Fees, an act relating to education, sponsored by Senator Brennan.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of the whole rise and report it do so with the recommendation that Senate File 84 do pass. I yield to Senator Brennan for an explanation of the Senate file.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring to you our school facility use fee, Senate File 84. This bill asks that our school facilities really just charge a fair cost to extracurricular activities in sports clubs that use the facilities. We have had a problem in my school district where our sports clubs are wanting to use the school facilities. They're what's available for the kids to use for their sports clubs and their activities, but they're being priced out of being able to use those facilities. They're being kicked out and have nowhere to go. So with this bill, we're just asking that we not exceed the direct incremental cost incurred by the district, that it's supported by an itemized statement, and that the fees be the same or similar use throughout the district and for the property.
Is there any discussion? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having done this work for quite a bit of my professional life, I can tell you that a lot of these facilities are under incredible pressure. And so with that as a background, I guess my question of the bringer of the bill is, why would we want to control this out of state government versus allowing our districts to take care of their communities? We don't have this problem up in my neck of the woods. I think that our facilities folks do a remarkable job of trying to utilize those facilities to their fullest. And so why state-controlled versus allowing our districts to do this? Thank you.
Senator Scott.
Chairman, let me respond to that. My understanding after hearing the testimony in committee is that the performance across the state is quite uneven. Many of the school districts have the traditional policy of we'll make these facilities available to the extent we possibly can to the general public, to the sports clubs, to the other volunteer organizations like that that are seeking to use it, particularly those that are using it for the activities of the school children of the state. But there are some districts that are finding that bureaucratically inconvenient and are raising the fees, charging fees that appear to be designed to close those uses off. Mr. Chairman, while I'm on my feet, we also uncovered a problem. Some districts are starting to demand insurance policies, insurance coverages that are not generally available to these volunteer athletic organizations, which are typically what's using the facilities. And there was a suggestion we include those in what they're prohibited to do. And we discovered there are problems where the insurance, or the school district is buying commercial insurance, they're getting this kind of demand out of their commercial insurer. And it looks like we're developing a problem there. Solving that problem is well beyond the scope of this bill. So we decided we couldn't deal with that, but that's something, Mr. Chairman, I think we're going to have to deal with in the future, because many communities depend on these facilities for the volunteer organizations, particularly some of the sports organizations. And the combination of the interaction between the trial lawyers and the insurance companies and our litigious society is starting to close these off. And we're going to have to look at the sovereign immunity legislation, the insurance code, and some other things to get a decent solution for that. So we couldn't solve that here, but I think this will solve most of the problem we're starting to see. And again, Mr. Chairman, it seems to be very uneven among the school districts. And the system we've got these days, where so much of it is coming to the state, sure enough, we're getting the other things you'd expect since the Supreme Court made us the statewide school board.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to just put some more color on this conversation. As many of you know, I have 3 children. All of them are very active in sports. My kids were made for public school. They play extracurricular sports through their school districts. But that has fostered a love of some club sports. And so, you know, I think of one of my children in particular likes to play club volleyball in the winter when it's not offered through her district. I can tell you, we have limited resources for these kind of athletic facilities in Cheyenne. As a result, a lot of parent groups reach out to our school district asking about the fee schedule, what are the requirements, and at first blush, they might sound reasonable. For the elementary schools in Cheyenne, it's about $12.50 an hour, but then there are additional fees that start accumulating. $30 an hour for custodial staff charges, deposits, cancellation fees, and other potential administrative fees. So running these facilities becomes really financially unreasonable. Further, I think there's a preference in our district to offer up elementary schools, but many of our elementary schools are very old. Some of them have no gymnasiums for elementary school kids at all. That's my daughter. She has no gym in her school. That's okay, we make it work. Other schools, their gym space plays double duty to their lunchrooms and have linoleum floors. The basketball hoops are drilled to the wall, and they're just really unsuitable and unsafe, particularly the floors when they're slippery like that. So that really drives a lot of traffic to the junior highs. The fee is higher. There's more demand for that. And so what you don't see, though, Mr. Chairman, is these facilities finding a way to make it work. It's more of a lockdown and really just a preference for providing these facilities for just the district's use. Earlier this last year in midsummer, one volunteer swim club actually sued our district because our district imposed a tiered system, which creates some discriminatory preferences within it, charging different fees for different users. And so there's confusion over whether or not our board actually adopted that policy, but it's led parents to actually file a lawsuit. And so what we're hearing on the legislative side is here's an opportunity where our district sees that there's potentially a problem. Instead of addressing it through revising a board policy, I think the decision has been made to write out this lawsuit. And so when things like that happen, we hear about it and it trickles up. And I think rightfully as a state, and we've had this conversation in this body already today, whose responsibility is it to pay for K through 12 education and provide that? Us, the state of Wyoming. We are paying for CAPCON. We are paying for operations and maintenance. And so that's the ask, Mr. Chairman. When our constituents come to us, that's what they're asking. If the state's paying for these facilities, why don't we have better access to it? So we've really tried to thread the needle on this, but I just wanted to offer that color that, certainly I didn't want it to come to this, but I've seen this in action, unfortunately firsthand. Some of our facilities are really only held for certain uses which benefit a very small minority of students and really isn't made available to a larger group of kids, which I think is unfortunate. So we're asking for you to let us keep working on this issue, but at least this helps address some of the financial concerns that we've heard from parents.
Senator Landon.
My sympathies do go out, and it sounds like we've got some issues here in Laramie 1. That's not the first time, unfortunately. But I guess, given all that the chairman of education shared with us, that we're wildly all over the place from district to district. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise because there's all sorts of different districts out there. And, you know, regarding insurance, folks, there's a very good reason. These institutions, whether it's secondary schools or our colleges or all the way up to the university level, they have to carry insurance as well. And so as a former athletic director, I can tell you that we had to carry some insurance and we had to require some insurance in our facilities in order to keep our deductible within reason. But back to the whole notion of whether or not we want to grow state government to eliminate a problem in a single district, I'm just really cautious about that. To the bringers of the bill, I totally get it. I understand. If we're going to go there, though, I guess I would suggest to the body that this bill needs some more descriptors. Are we talking about nonprofit groups? Are we talking about church groups? What about youth? And if it's a youth group, is there an age constriction? Is there, there's all sorts of considerations that we get into. If we're going to become, you know, the caretakers of these facilities in this respect, it just feels like to me we're going to have to become a lot more detailed, and so I'm still having some trouble getting there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Further discussion? Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm hearing quite a few black helicopters right now. We just want the public to be able to use these public facilities for a reasonable price throughout the whole state.
Okay, are you ready for the question? All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 84, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Senate File 84 has passed the committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration Promoting Obscenity. The reading clerk will read it in.
Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration Promoting Obscenity, an act relating to criminal procedure, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with a due pass recommendation on Senate File 31, Sex Offender Registration Promoting Obscenity. And for a description of this fine little bill, please, I'd ask that you call on Senator Furphy.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last time there was some complaints about me doing this here. Can everyone hear me okay here? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a pretty simple bill, but what happened in the interim, we had testimony from a lady whose child received obscene material from a gentleman from out of state. And she checked into it and found out he was a sex offender registered under the other state, but just by sending obscene material to a minor, our current regulations don't require that to be a sex offender and have to register with our state. So we're changing that with this bill. And it's very simple. If you look at page 2 of the bill, on line 5, it quotes our current statute, 64302, which discusses obscene material. And so this bill says, if the obscene material was knowingly disseminated to a minor, that now, under our current regulations, if you're a sex offender from another state, that will require you to register in our state. That's the simplicity of this bill, but I think it's an important issue. We don't want those bad guys going around sending stuff to our kids. So, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of Senate File 31 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Discussion on Senate File 31. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I do have a couple of questions because I'm thinking of kind of the edge cases on this, and I think it's important to get this right. If you're potentially listing somebody as a sex offender, it's a pretty substantial act to get on that list. And as I was just briefly reading through the criminal statute this refers to, I guess I don't understand exactly what that circumstance could be when we're talking about a minor. A minor is simply somebody less than 18 years old. You can imagine somebody being convicted of that who is less than 18 years old, as an example, or alternatively, somebody who's 19 years old sending something that is obscene material to somebody who is 17 years old and then ends up on a sex offender list. I guess I'm wondering about whether that's always an appropriate response and whether this part of statute effectively requires it or provides for some discretion as to whether it's appropriate, that this is the kind of thing we would all worry about or the kind of thing that honestly folks would not worry about very much. And I don't know. I don't know exactly how this statute ends up working out. When you look at the rest of this statute, you know, you're talking about sex offenses against young children and things along those lines, obviously egregious. This is relating to a minor, again, an 18-year-old interacting with a 17-year-old seems to potentially be on the sex offender list. They could be friends.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our current regulation says a person commits crime by promoting obscenity if he produces the material. And it's talking here, but it doesn't go into it until you get to 64303, where it says sexual exploitation of children. So I do think we need this new regulation in this bill, and I think it's certainly appropriate that we get sex offenders from other states who come into here and they're still doing inappropriate things. I think this regulation applies, and I think we should vote this in and get those bad guys out and at least registered so we know who they are and where they are. Hope that answered the question, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Senators. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, and sorry to belabor this, but I don't know if these are bad guys. That is my concern. A sex offender is a rarefied classification of bad guys, as we've discussed, and is a list deserving of those types of folks. As I'm reading this particular criminal offense, it can certainly include bad guys, but does not appear to be an exclusive list of bad guys, where, as I noted, an 18-year-old could send a very naughty picture to a 17-year-old that is the friend of that 18-year-old and appears to be guilty of this and would end up on that list. I don't see any exceptions for it's a couple of friends. And the party that receives it could not even be offended, as I read it. Again, going back to the criminal statute. And it's always a pain to stand up and try and defend criminals that everybody wants to add to a sex offender list. I get it. But at the end of the day, nobody in here wants to be added to a sex offender list for something that doesn't qualify for the types of bad guys that the good senator is talking about. So I think it's critical that we get this right, and we're not talking seemingly about the same classification of offenses that the rest of the sex offender classifications are looking to, which are truly those types of bad guys. So I guess, how do we prevent, or are we preventing, the circumstance of somebody ending up on a sex offender list, which that certainly wrecks them for a while. It's going to be a challenge for those individuals to be on that sex offender list and have to go through all of the challenges there when they literally received a pic, sent it by phone to a friend, and then somehow ended up being prosecuted for that because the recipient was potentially a 17-and-a-half-year-old. Are there any circumstances, is there anything else in statute that mitigates that scenario and makes sure it doesn't happen? I don't see it.
Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And that, the senator just actually really touched on this. Let's keep in mind, folks, we're talking about convicted folks. First of all, the district attorney house there has to file the charges and has to take somebody to court and convict them. And the dockets are full. In a situation like my good friend just described, I seriously doubt if a district attorney would take that case. We're talking about somebody here who had to register in another state, moved to Wyoming, maybe because he didn't have to register here, but he did, and the young lady got a hold of us and said, you know, that doesn't seem right to me. He was convicted of sending something to me when I was less than 15 years old, and he had to report that in another state. But now, he doesn't have to report it in Wyoming. So that's what we're trying to fix, Mr. Chairman. If this moves on, we will work hard to try to dig down and make sure that you know exactly what we're talking about here, but you notice the 13 to 15-year-old language right above this citation here. So, Mr. Chairman, I think this is a good fix to the statute. I will tell you that I think the Judiciary Committee is probably going to have to wade back in. This is a huge, extensive list in our statutes. It's a very, very difficult area of the law. I know the former chairman can vouch for that. But at any rate, I think for now, this is a good fix until we can get to an overall look of that entire basket of statutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
For discussions, Senator McEwen. I'm kind of stuck here, but I think what I just heard, Mr. Chairman, was we're going to gamble that the courts are so full that they won't take a case, that this might actually make illegal. Now, I think that's kind of a slippery slope to head down. I think we need to make sure that we already got laws that are ill-defined and way too open. So yeah, I'm kind of nervous about that, Mr. Chairman. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering if there was any discussion in the committee about ex post facto, meaning changing the penalty of something. Is this a penalty or something else, a civil type of issue, where they get convicted of something and then then we change the law and we raise the penalty, are they then subject to that penalty? So are we changing something to someone who would not have this, whether they were convicted in another state or this state, doesn't matter. And then how do we notify those folks? I don't know how many of these convictions have already happened in Wyoming, and those folks would not be subject to this. We heard about one case that came to you, but how many cases have been convicted under this statute? And then how many folks are going to get added to the rolls, unbeknownst to them, by this action? And how do they get notified? And what are they guilty of? What is the penalty for not being registered when you don't know you should have registered because we changed the law? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to agree with my senator from over the hill that I don't think we've thought this through. I don't think that we have thought of all the implications for this. It was just brought up that, you know, is this ex post facto? Is this not? Like our good senator said, what about the 18-year-old with the 17-year-old? I don't think this bill is ready for prime time.
Further discussion. Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I think, honestly, it's not the problem with this statute, it's actually the problem with the previously existing statute, which when you read it, is vague, and I don't know if it gets prosecuted at this point in time or how that prosecution goes, but I was just reading through the prior statute, and I took a moment to read through that, and it's a bit of a challenging statute because it's what has the problems that we've been discussing and presents challenges. One thing that gets to the idea that my good colleague from up in Casper noted above is that there is the possibility of setting a specific age restriction, which might be helpful. In fact, above it says, you know, if between 13 and 15, for example, this could certainly be amended to indicate if below the age of 13, as an example, something along those lines where everyone would deem that to be inappropriate, maybe that's acceptable. I think there might be ways to fix it, but I certainly do have concerns about those edge cases. So I appreciate this conversation, though. I appreciate everybody's thoughtfulness.
Senator Landon.
So, Mr. Chairman, I understand, I get it. This is a set of our statutes that's very, very difficult, and it's difficult to wade into it. I will say this, the ex post facto issue came up this morning in committee, and we cannot charge someone differently after they've already been convicted previously. So nobody is going to be added into this who was already adjudicated in Wyoming and has served the sentence, has already taken care of a debt to society. This only applies from this point forward. So, you know, I think it plugs a hole that needs to be plugged. I don't like the idea of these individuals who may be coming here from somewhere else and finding our laws not to be as strict as where they came from and not having to register. So that's the choice in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm coming into this debate somewhat untimely. I was working on some other matters. But I'm aware of the bill we're talking about, and I heard reference that to ex post facto, which is fun with Latin today, and that its application would not apply. That issue has been long challenged all the way to our US Supreme Court, and the concept associated with ex post facto does not apply in this case, meaning that there are no ex post facto protections. Ex post facto meaning we can't create a crime today and then charge someone for something they did yesterday that would in the future be a crime. That's what it means. You can't go back in time and charge someone with a crime that wasn't illegal at the time. That concept does not apply to the sex offender registry. The reason is the sex offender registry is civil in nature, and the courts have interpreted it not to be punitive. Lawyers would debate that, but that is how the courts have interpreted it. And so this would be retroactive for however you feel about that. It would be retroactive.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I stand corrected, and I'll sure have a good visit with the folks from the Attorney General's office about that, but thank you to the former chairman.
Further discussion. Question has been called. All those in favor of Senator Landon's motion, the one committee whole rises to report to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 31, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. Chair is in doubt. We do a standing division. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, please rise. Got to get my glasses checked. The final count is 13 aye and 10 no. Senate File 31 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next file for our consideration is Senate File 5. The reading clerk will read it in.
Senate File 5, Organ Transplant Recipient Protection, an act relating to insurance, sponsored by the Labor Committee.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your motion? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable motion on a favorable recommendation on Senate File 5, and to discuss and explain this bill, Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Senate File 5, ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, you remember last year we had a bill that went through, passed the body, we signed into law that gave organ transplant donors protection from discriminatory actions by insurance companies. Well, this is the recipient side of that bill. Last year when it came to our committee on the Senate side, I asked, could we just amend recipient into that donor bill? And there was I guess a feeling that had been so far in the process and it had been one-sided that they didn't do that. Well, the Labor Health Committee took up that reciprocal side, if you will, the recipient side, and this is basically a bill that adds, as you'll go to page 2, the first one is a living organ, and now we've added organ transplant recipient, and then provides them with the protections against discrimination by an insurer. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration and stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion on Senate File 5. Seeing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Dockstader's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Senate File 5 has passed the Committee of the Whole. The next file for our consideration is Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults. The reading clerk will read it in.
Senate File 7, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults, an act relating to public health and safety, sponsored by the Labor Committee.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Excuse me. You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your motion, Senator Dockstader?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 7, and to explain the bill, Senator Bouchard.
Senator Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill is a very simple bill, and I want you to please turn to page 2, and where it says on line 7, shall include vulnerable adults. And that's the important part of this, because it's adults with severe mental illness. And what we're doing here is basically, under severe mental illness, there could be a lot of clinical dispositions that are documented. Under vulnerable adults, that's a classification of its own within the federal healthcare system. It's defined. All we're doing here in this bill is including the definition of vulnerable adults to be with adults with severe mental illness. And the reason is that for processing, care, even billing, all of that has to be in here and defined. So that's as simple as this bill is. So ask for your yes vote on this bill.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I missed the explanation on this bit, but why the until June 30th, 2026, as opposed to striking that and basically making that the statute?
Senator Bouchard.
Mr. Chairman, the best explanation I can give you is if you've looked at a lot of our behavioral health redesign bills, they've all had either sunsets or different time dates of when they are being installed. And I know we have a series of bills that we passed and that had those sunsets, and I would venture to say that it has to do with how we've been redesigning this all along, and this is just following those same guidelines. And yeah, I'll check into it and get a real specific answer for that question.
Further discussion on Senate File 7? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Dockstatter's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 7, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. Senate File 7 is passed, committee of the whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 81, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities Immunity. The reading clerk will read it in.
Senate File 81, Hospital or Healthcare District Created Entities Immunity, an act relating to civil procedure, sponsored by Senator Baldwin.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Senator Dockstader, what is your pleasure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that when the committee of the whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 81. To explain the bill, Senator Barlow.
Senator Barlow, and there is an amendment, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think if we could get the standing committee amendment read in, that would be appreciated.
Senate File 81, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 4, delete.
Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 81 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, because the Standing Committee Amendment, this is a very short bill, the Standing Committee Amendment actually is a clarifying amendment to the bill. I think it's best that we just take them up together, and I'll ask for the disposition of the Standing Committee Amendment. So if you will, ladies and gentlemen, the circumstance that's is occurring in multiple parts of the state, but certainly in my community, is we have a hospital district which covers one community, one county. We have County Memorial Hospital in a second community. They have gone together in a joint venture and put together a third entity, because remember, they're both county entities, but they've joined together to have an EMS service between the two counties. Actually, they're offering it to other counties who can no longer support an EMS service. Well, what has occurred, and that is allowed in statute under Title 18, 8301. But what is occurring is there's an ambiguity about whether that third entity, so we have a governmental entity and a second governmental entity coming together and forming another entity. What's unclear in our statutes is whether that third entity is covered under the Governmental Immunity Act. And so what this is doing is going in, recognizing that these entities can already do this in current statute. It's going in actually into the Governmental Claims Act in Title I and saying, if these entities form a third entity and they own all of it, meaning there's no private entity involved in it, if it's all public entities involved in this, they too are covered under the Governmental Claims Act. So they have those protections that all governments have. So that's the simplicity of the bill. Now, if you look at the amendment, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that there's a deletion of a statutory reference, 188301. I'm just going to be candid with you. It's my preference that we don't reference statutes. And so what you'll see is I strike the statute reference and I actually put in the 4 types of entities that are in 188301. So that if you're looking at it, you don't have to go look up 188301. You know exactly who can be involved in this. And that is a County Memorial Hospital, Hospital District, Rural Health Care District, or Senior Care District. So that's the second thing we did with the amendment was we made it effective immediately. And the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that entity up in Northeast Wyoming, and I understand there's a couple of others being considered elsewhere in the state, it's already in existence. So why would we wait till July 1st to actually give them these protections when we could do it immediately with that immediate language? So, Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions on the Standing Committee amendment, I would ask to have that adopted.
Any discussion on the amendment? Question on the amendment? All those in favor of Senator Barlow's motion to adopt the Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 81, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The amendment has been adopted. Back to the bill. Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that vigorous aye on the standing committee amendment, I would ask you to vote even more vigorously on the amended version of Senate File 81. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion on the bill? Hearing none, are you ready for the question? I sense yes, although you're very quiet. All those in favor of Senator Dockstatter's motion when the committee of the whole rises to report to do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 81, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. That was much better. Senate File 81 has passed the committee of the whole. The final and next bill for our consideration, Senate File, I'm sorry, it's not really a bill. Senate File 65, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments.
Senate File 5, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments, an act relating to water sponsored by the Water Committee.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Steinmetz? As soon as I find you, Senator Steinmetz. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's bring her home with the last bill of the day. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with a recommendation that Senate File 65, Temporary Water Use Agreements Amendments, do pass, and for an explanation of the bill, I call on Senator Hicks.
And Senator Hicks, there is an amendment whenever you'd like that read in.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move Senate File 65 and ask for your favorable consideration of a do pass. There is a standing committee amendment. Could I have that read in at this time?
Senate File 65, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 1, line 12, before.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move standing committee amendment number 1. So,
Senator Hicks,
Mr. Chairman, this bill is a little bit of a cleanup. So if you look at the actual title on this bill is slightly changed when you get to 41.3.110. Originally, it was right to acquire temporary water rights for highways or railroads, roadbed construction or repair applications and restrictions of fees. It had another provision in there that allowed for other purposes. This was enacted in sometime in the 1960s when they were building the interstate highway across Wyoming, and there was a need for construction, water for construction, and we didn't have an opportunity for a lot of places for them to get that water except for to go acquire that through a temporary change of use from either an existing water right. So the first thing we've done, Mr. Chairman, is just try to clarify what the purpose of a temporary change of use is. Again, this has been going on for now 80-some years that we've been issuing these temporary change of use. There's one substantive change in here. We've changed the duration that you could do for a temporary change of use from 2 years to 5 years. Mr. Chairman, we've got rid of all that archaic language that talked about the highway construction, railroads, and we've just brought that back and says now you can do a temporary change of use for temporary beneficial purposes. Mr. Chairman, and then if you go into, so that's basically what the bill does in 110. Let me cover that. There was 2 amendments that dealt with 110. So at the beginning of this, there were some concerns that this temporary change of use, even though it's been in existence for 80 years, that it might be used for an in-stream flow. So if you go back to standing committee amendment on page 1, light 2, just says, except for in-stream flows, any other beneficial purpose could be utilized for a temporary change of use of water. So it's the only thing that it would potentially exclude that you couldn't do. It's kind of a belt and suspenders thing. Only the state can hold an in-stream flow right now, and I don't see the state going out and doing any temporary change of use. But there was some concerns, so we've included that language in there. The other thing on the amendment comes in, and it just says you can do a 5-year temporary change of use, but only for a maximum of 10 years. So you could actually renew that for 10 years. So, Mr. Chairman, we go into the next section, which is 41.3.111. And basically, we made a couple of corrections here to actually reflect what the practice has been by the Board of Control. So all that section deals with is it basically preserves prior appropriation. So if somebody does a temporary change of use, which means somebody else is using that water right, Historically, the way that's been administered, if somebody says, I'm being injured associated with that temporary change of use, they call the hydrographer, regardless of whether you're senior or junior. And they go out and do an investigation to make a determination, this is in fact whether you're being injured or not, whether you're junior or senior. Only thing this says now with this change, it says, if you're a senior water right holder and somebody's doing a temporary change of use, and you call the Board of Control or the hydrographer saying, this is injuring me, they will shut that temporary use off until they get out there and make an investigation to determine whether you're being injured or not. If the senior's not, or if the senior is being injured, they shut them off before the investigation. Then they look at any junior water right holder to see if they're injured. The only thing it does change is if there's a request of injury, they shut it off and then investigate, where now they just let it go in until the investigation's on. So it tries to protect those prior appropriation, first in line, first in time, from a temporary change of use industry. Mr. Chairman, that's what the bill does. Let's stand for any questions. Oh, Mr. Chairman, I would move for adoption of the standing committee amendment.
Okay, any questions on the amendment? No questions on the amendment. All those in favor of Senator Hicks' motion, Senator Hicks' motion that when the committee of the whole rises, that it approve, adopt. It must be late. Standing committee amendment 1 to Senate File 65, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ooh, we're getting sluggish again. That amendment has passed the committee of the whole. Back on the bill, Senator Barlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So to the good bringer of the bill, presenter of the bill, I guess my inquiry is, as I look at the list that's being stricken, and we've gone to a temporary beneficial use, I go back to the days of coal bed methane and some of those other things, and I see drilling operations, and I said, so what I want to understand, is this surface water, groundwater, or all waters that this could be applicable to? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hicks.
So to answer that question, it would be all water. But to get to the specific question, and this is where if you go up to page 2, go to line 2. Under that language, so if you get there where it says, or other temporary purposes, that give complete discretion to the state engineer to make a determination as to what another purpose was. And so the language that we've brought in, if you go down to page 16, or line 16, page 2, temporary beneficial purposes. Beneficial purpose, beneficial use are either defined in statutes or they're maintained on the state engineer's website. The very purpose for that was so we don't get a ruling where there's no public input. So that's what happened with coal bed methane. There was a determination by the state engineer that that was a beneficial use. That's the reason we brought in that language, to conform with beneficial use and not just make a discretion of a temporary purpose, which may nobody know what that is out in the future. So I hope that helps explain that.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Steinmetz's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 65, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Senate File 65 has passed the committee of the whole. That clears the deck, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I all rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, don't talk. Say no.
Don't talk. Andy, reading clerk, read the report.
Mr. President, your committee of the whole, having had under considerations bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. Senate File 84, do pass. Senate File 31, do pass. Senate File 5, do pass. Senate File 7, do pass. Senate File 81, do pass amended. Senate File 65, do pass amended. Senator Baldwin, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the committee of whole report.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Pretty good job. Motion is passed. Got a quick announcement. You're going to move, this came off for me, and you're going to move budget amendment the same way that they can request amendment or simply responding to LSO email as delivered to the draft amendment. There'll also be someone in the Senate bullpen starting at 9 a.m. on Sunday if they want to talk to somebody about their amendment or they want to approve your amendment. So if you got problems, you're having a hard time getting hold of somebody, work it through, but we need to make sure those get posted on time. We're trying to do it as efficient as we can for y'all. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move we stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Monday, February 19th, 2024.
Thank you. Announcements, Senator Scott.
Mr. President, Committee Number 4, Education, will meet at 8 a.m. Downstairs, room W110. Following bills, Senate File 61, Education Charter School Amendments, continued. That's just, we're going to consider amendments and vote on the bill. We're not going to take any more public testimony in that. Senate File 82, Summer Vacation Preservation Act. Senate File 110, School Finance Cash Reserves. And we hope to start, maybe take public testimony on Senate File 95, Teacher Tenure.
Senator Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Minerals Business and Economic Development Committee Number 9 will be Monday, February 19th, upon the noon recess, Capitol Extension Room 4, and online to hear the following bills. Senate File 44, Limited Mining Operations Amendments. Senate File 64, Mineral Royalties Proportional Severance Tax Refunds. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, the perfect committee, Labor, Health, and Social Services. No, laughter wasn't called for. We'll meet first thing Monday morning at 8 a.m. to consider the following bills. Senate File 57, Wyoming Adult Hearing Aid Program. Senate File 69, Hospice Care Reimbursements. Senate File 115, Behavioral Health Redesign Amendments 2. That's in room 6 and online.
Thank you. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Committee Number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources will meet Tuesday, February 20th at 8 o'clock to consider the following bills. Senate File 125, Parimutuel Wagering Activities Amendments. Senate File 111, Mule and Whitetail Deer Separate Hunting Seasons. And Senate File 118, Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Relocation Federal Action.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee Number 5, Agriculture, State and Public Lands and Water Resources Committee will meet Monday, February 19th, which is a change. So anybody listening out there, Monday at 8 a.m. in room 2 in the Capitol Extension to consider Senate File 66, Water Exchange Amendments continued from 2:15. Senate File 75, Omnibus Water Bill Construction. Senate File 103, Wyoming Prime Act. And then on our regular meeting date will be the Gun Committee, and I don't have all of those bills for you, but we will get an announcement out for our February 20th meeting on Tuesday. Thank you.
Bless America, you get to fire the first shot. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee will meet Monday, February 19th upon noon recess to discuss some very critical bills. Senate File 77, Homeland Defense Infrastructure Reporting and Investigating. SJ2, Foreign Adversaries, Prohibited Property Ownership, and Senate File 102, Foreign Property Ownership, Critical Infrastructure.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee 1 Judiciary will be meeting at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, room 4 downstairs, to take up the following bills. We will not be taking up a sex offender bill, maybe ever again. But we will take up, Mr. President, Senate File 45, Vulnerable Adults, Civil Cause of Action 2, followed by Senate File 32, Hemp Limitations on Psychoactive Substances, and Senate File 76, the Prostitution Amendments Bill. That will be Monday morning, and if time permits on Senate File 76, otherwise we'll carry that over we'll have a special meeting as well lined up for Tuesday. Looks like we might need it. So, Mr. President, Monday morning, 8 o'clock.
We'll get your committee lined up, drugs, sex, rock and roll. Rules Committee will meet Tuesday, February 20th, 2024 at 9 a.m. in the State Capitol Room, W113, and online to take up our Ag Committee issues that we've come up with. And also, Senator Hicks, I'm not sure of the name of yours, but we're also going to bring up the rule change as well. So those two are handbook rule change as far as, I don't even know how to designate it, but basically how we handle the removal and handling the committee members off on the interim. So with that, all in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. The Senate is adjourned until 10 a.m. Monday, February 19th. Thank you. Quick, huge thank you to the Probst Committee. Everything went phenomenally smooth. You folks can enjoy. I think you're going to be on your way home while the other guys are ordering pizza over there. You've been pretty efficient and done a great job. So really proud of the Senate and what we've got done over here. Thank you.